Hello. This one's saying hello with her tail, apparently. Hi. Hi. Oh, hi, Buggy. Hello. Just caught a glimpse into my life. It's another day, another stream in fascist America. Welcome to Juniper. Just like using my tits as a stepping stool. Anyway. No. She's been wanting to drink my water lately, and I don't like that. You know I don't like that, Bug. Welcome to whatever this is, an attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. My name is Aubri Devashrayee. This is Juniper. She's been coming in at the beginning of streams, which normally she will come in the middle. There isn't really like a pattern, but she's been coming in more at the beginning for the send-off, the warm welcome. Today, I want to finish the HIV awareness course, specifically talking about the intersectionality of people with HIV and the queer community and race and ethnicity and just other forms of marginalization and how this plays a role in the kind of care that is available and that people receive and what they should be receiving. We know that the healthcare system is very broken in the US, but it also is built off of these white supremacist, ableist ideals, patriarchal ideals, where there are certain people who are given more priority in the system, and it is very binary as well. So we've been going through these courses, and there's a really lot of really great education. My friend helped make them at AIDS United. Thank you, Gabriel. You're amazing. So I want to finish that final course for HIV awareness because we need to be talking about the dire need for HIV funding, especially as the US has canceled all of these various types of aid that are going around the world and how devastating that has been. To be clear, the US did this to establish what they call like soft power, and it's a way to have a foothold in various parts of the area and have control. But it also, with removing these types of services and programs, has led to a lot of senseless death and suffering. And we know that the climate is only getting worse in the US, let's be honest, for marginalized people. And getting healthcare and the things that we need, it's becoming ever more unavailable, especially depending on the intersections of marginalization that you experience. So, I want to talk about that as we finish that last course. And then I saw a video, and I mentioned this yesterday, I didn't have time to watch it, but it is from PBS Utah, called How the Political Power and Population of Southern Utah Are Growing. And I don't know what their angle is with this. So I wanted to give it a watch. I may not finish the whole thing. It's 28 minutes. And it's not getting a whole lot of motion, really. But I am curious to hear what they have to say. So I wanted to give that a watch. And also talk about the need for a world strike. I recently have been posting more on YouTube, like shorts, and many of you already know this, but I admittedly am prejudiced against short form content because I think it lacks a lot of nuance and context. And as I am pursuing this avenue, I am seeing just how true that actually is. As I have been calling for a world strike, many people are like, what are the specifics? We need more details. And I'm like, I know. I don't have all the answers. This is why I'm trying to say we all need to work together to come up with demands and solutions, because I'm not going to pretend like I have all of the expertise to fix global issues that are affecting all of us, especially the working class. So, this is me saying we need to have a wider conversation about this. But I am glad that people are at least intrigued, asking about what the details are. I don't have all the answers. I'm not going to pretend to. But we do need to fight this Epstein billionaire class that is destroying the earth with their endless war and extraction, and how they are destroying the planet, our humanity. They are taking away our jobs. They are siphoning our wages. These people who are running the world, the ruling class, billionaire Epstein class, have enormous outsized power, and we need to take our power back by withholding our labor to halt the world's economy and demand very, as we're talking about specifics, specific demands, have specific demands be met so that we can better material conditions for everyone in the working class globally. In my mind, I think this means shutting down all AI. AI must be destroyed. This means ending genocides, ending wars, ending illegal occupations, ending the endless greed of these oil tycoons, of cryptocurrency. I don't know what the specifics look like in terms of policy and what that oversight would be or how to hold them accountable. This is where I'm opening things up, and I would love to have everyone's expertise on this so that we can be working together to come up with solutions, because we have way more talent and intelligence in the working class than they do in the capitalist class. So we have a lot of resources and minds and creativity to be pulling from. If you have any ideas, any demands, fill out the form in profile. If you have specifics, that word, that you are wanting to pursue, let me know about them. What exactly are you wanting to be specific? Because right now, I'm throwing out this idea that many people have been talking about for a while, especially when it comes to Palestinian liberation and ending the genocides in Sudan and the Congo, that we need a world strike. So those are a few of the specifics and demands where it has come from, but also looking at the various ways that we can implement policy in a direct way to accomplish these goals of distributing wealth and having oversight with corporations and the billionaire class, the ruling class, political class, because they are all protecting each other, as we have seen with the Epstein files. Okay. So, I did want to highlight something that Senator Bernie Sanders posted. He and AOC are introducing an AI data center moratorium act, and I am interested in hearing more about this because AI is extremely harmful to the well-being and future of humanity, in my opinion. Hi, Bug. Do you need a spot? Or do you want to stay here? I think she just likes being involved. Could I give this piece of wood a couple whacks? What? What does that mean? Hello, Stuart Little is my son. Is that one of your demands? Oh, yes. Please, go ahead. He's working on something. Could you just mute for like 20 seconds? Okay. Let's get into this Leslie Jones video, and I'll play this and then you can do what you need to do. Okay, I wasn't sure what was going on, but now I figured it out. Hey, this is Z-Way and Leslie Jones, just to start off in a lighthearted way before we get into more of the serious subject matter.
Hi, oh my gosh, we're in the same hue.
I told you.
Thank you so much. I'd get up, but I'm taped down. Tonight, I interview comedian Leslie Jones. What turned you straight?
Chris Brown, marriage is legalized slavery. So you want to fight?
I would never want to fight a black woman. What did you get Chris Rock for Black History Month?
Am I the only person in here that think this girl crazy?
You're threatening me?
Where's my publicist?
My most iconic interview yet. Do you feel good about this interview?
No.
Z-Way starts now. My next iconic guest is a comedian, writer, and Emmy winner. Watch her special, Leslie Jones' Life Part 2 on Peacock. Give it up for Leslie Jones.
Yay!
Woo!
I love Leslie Jones.
Hey, baby.
So can you state for the record your race, gender, and pronouns?
First of all, I'm 58.
gosh.
Sorry. Okay, my who?
What is your race, gender, and pronouns?
My race is African American. My, what was the next one? My race
Gender?
Gender. We in that world. I'm a girl.
And pronouns?
I'm that in that. No, sorry. She, he, be, and all that.
Got
All
it.
that. I'm all the pronouns. How about that?
You take it all.
Yeah.
And-
she and her.
What turned you straight?
She went for the joke
What?
and then finished normal.
What turned me straight?
Yes.
I was never not straight. Okay.
Like how queer people feel when they're asked that. I want to look at these comments. I've seen this before, just as a disclaimer. So this isn't surprising to me, but I wanted to rewatch it and play it on the stream. I want to see Aubri Devashrayee on here bad. That would be an incredible interview. This is just Z-Way rage baiting Leslie for 20 minutes straight. Leslie has definitely never seen this show before. It's giving chaotic aunt and chaotic niece. What is the show? Is the realest question that's ever been asked on Z-Way's show. I mean, honestly.
What turned me straight? Chris Brown. You said what turned me straight, right? Wait a minute, are you saying straight sexually?
Yes, as opposed to...
What turns me straight? I don't understand the question. I'm not straight.
Do bisexuals exist?
Yes, I'm sure they do.
Please tell them that they matter.
But what is the show?
Please.
Okay, bisexuals do matter. I'm not sure why I'm getting asked that, but okay. You want to fight?
I would never...
Yeah, she's not seen this show before, understanding the premise of just like absurd questions that are intentionally trying to bait you. She is probably going to this interview and is like, oh, we're going to talk about my special, talk about my book that you see up on the other side when it cuts back to Leslie. And she's like, this is nothing to do with that. So what's going on?
I want to fight a black woman.
Okay. What's the next question?
As a black woman, do you have any marginalized communities you'd like to apologize to?
Yeah, all us dumbasses.
Oh.
That's a whole big old marginalized. No, I ain't nobody. I don't do things that I have to apologize for.
You've never apologized.
No, I didn't say I'd never apologize. I'm just saying I try not to do things that I have to apologize for.
Well, the night is young. Okay,
Good way to
what's
live
your
life.
horoscope and how do you use it to justify your personality disorder?
First of all,
Which
Virgos don't
personality
have
disorder
personality
for me?
disorders. We are the personality. And yeah,
When's your birthday?
September the 7th.
Oh, wow. 3 days after Beyonce.
That's right. And 1 through 10 are the best Virgos, so that you know. Not that you asked me that.
How would you describe a Virgo's personality?
Perfect.
Oh.
Perfection. Hard worker.
Oh.
Precise.
Wow.
Genuine.
Oh.
Dead ass.
Even
Wow.
getting in the interjections from Z-Way. Wow. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You were discovered for SNL by Chris Rock.
Yes.
Who are some of the other male allies who've helped your career?
Cat Williams. He took me on tour with him. J. Anthony Brown. They gave me good advice. Eddie Murphy has given me great advice. Dave Chappelle has given me great advice.
And what did you get these men for Black History Month?
Not a goddamn thing.
No gift.
No. What did they get me?
It sounds like they were allies to you when you needed them.
And I didn't know we had to
And?
give gifts on Black History Month.
It's 28 to 29 days.
Do you give gifts?
Well, my birthday is Black History Month. Coming up.
My birthday is Black History Month. I think her birthday is in Black History Month. That is such a funny way to say that.
Name 3 peers that like you, but you don't like them.
Damn, do I want to say that?
You were saying some crazy
Please don't compare me to that man. If you want to stay friends with me, please do not compare me to this.
Oh my gosh.
I am very awesome. Well, I don't know if I want to reveal that because if they see this, then they're going to know I
Very
hate
awesome.
So I'm not answering that.
I mean, she's not
You know
wrong.
who you are.
Well, it sounds like they don't.
They do.
As a military brat, can you give a word of encouragement to the troops watching overseas?
Aw. You guys keep your head up and keep your body down.
Why would you say that?
Why would I not?
Now, please give
Yeah.
a word of encouragement
Keep your body down, like duck and cover, I'm guessing. She's like, yeah, that is good advice.
to the troops deployed in Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, Memphis, and Portland.
Get your ass somewhere and sit the down.
Oh.
Why are you even there? I'm not giving them no encouragement. They ain't supposed to be there.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah,
now, as a youth,
exactly.
you studied criminal justice.
Yes.
What are other ways you
Juniper's
uphold the police
deciding
state?
where she wants to
Uphold
sit.
the police?
You can see
state.
her in the corner.
I don't break the law?
You know, at one point in American history, it was illegal to learn how to read.
Okay.
Let's continue. You worked in late night comedy. Do you feel like you're part of the band from Titanic?
Yes. Sinking?
It's about performing in spite of tragedy.
Ooh, yes.
But maybe I'll simplify these questions.
No,
a
I
little.
like that. I like that. No, your questions suck, but it's cool.
Oh, my questions suck?
They're sucking bad.
Well, guess what? I have more questions, and I'll make
And I'm
sure
going to
that...
answer all of them.
Oh, well, except for who you hate.
Well, guess what? She's like, and what?
I can
So,
start by saying Zyway, Zawi, ZY, Zo.
Leslie Jones. Remember, I'm in the edit.
I'm going to kill you.
Coming up. And are you giving me COVID?
No.
What is going on?
You remember the other night
Have
I
you
had-
tested?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, my God. You're rude.
I'm rude. You're coughing open mouth, no
You're
coverage.
rude.
Cover your mouth when you
I
cough.
covered it.
Cue the tape.
that smile that she did too.
Who wouldn't you want to replace Lorne Michaels if he ever retires?
Lauren
He
Michaels
deleted
in
Why?
the captions. That's
Because
hilarious.
Pete would probably run it into the ground.
How so? How?
He's crazy.
That's descriptive.
You know, he probably would take the discipline out of it and probably let people do what they want.
Oh, there's that police state coming back up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when will Lorne let Keaton retire?
Oh, no one's gonna let Keenan retire. If he walks out that building will collapse.
I watched him my entire life on all that.
You did?
Yeah, of course.
He was.
Pierre Escargot, ho ho ho! Did you leave because you don't love the fast-paced work environment where your peers are your family?
No, I left
loved
because it
all
was time
that.
for me to go.
And how did you know it was time?
Well, I just
History
knew that they
is very
probably wanted
troubled
me to
there.
be there longer than I needed to be, and I had to leave before I couldn't leave. Does that make sense?
No, it's a riddle.
Okay, well, if you stay in
Before you couldn't leave, before what happened to Keenan happens to her, right?
place too long and overstay your stay, then you get to a point to where you can't leave. Because you haven't opened up your options on the outside.
I see. It's like golden handcuffs.
Okay. Am I the only person in here that think this girl crazy?
I'm not crazy. I'm a delight. Let's continue. What advice do you have for young black girls that dream of sitting crisscross applesauce
Yeah,
in Lorne
Leslie's
Michaels'
so
office?
lost.
Be serious about what you're doing when you're talking to Lauren, and also realize you're talking to Lauren Michaels. Lauren Michaels knows everyone and everything. So I'll tell you, when I sat in the office with him, I had the audacity to say that I knew Eddie Murphy. And he was like, great. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, then why are you looking at me like that?
I'm just listening, Leslie.
He wasn't listening. You
I
were
was
judging
listening
me.
intently.
You were judging
You
me
feel
with your eyes.
judged?
Yes, I
Why
feel
do you feel
judged.
judged?
Because your eyes are judging me.
Are you
Apparently, from what I have heard from Caleb Heron, when he was on Z-Way Show, he had a really great interview as well. He was hilarious. He said that the pauses are very long. They're way longer than what they show in the edit, and that it makes you uncomfortable. Like sitting up to 2 minutes of her just staring at you. That would do it. I wonder what would happen if he interviewed me, because we would just have a stare off, I think, because I have a very direct glance.
in therapy?
Always, everybody should be in therapy.
And who is your therapist? A black woman?
No, she's actually a white Jewish woman.
Okay, and why did you choose that?
Because I already have my aunt and my two aunts as my black women
And do they
therapists.
feel a little judgmental sometimes?
Yeah, they're from the South, of
Plus,
course.
maybe you're projecting onto me.
No.
Oh.
No. You crazy.
We don't say crazy anymore. Let's continue. Describe your perfect man.
Okay. Someone who lets me feel like I can be vulnerable in front of them. I can be myself, my authentic self in front of them, and they still love it.
And now describe why he's a threat to society.
Because he will definitely kill someone for me.
Oh, gosh. You want that?
Yeah.
Toxic.
It's not toxic. It's love.
If you could give a PSA to the
It's
young
love.
men who would kill for you, they're watching at home, I'm sure.
I have such a long list for you.
Of people.
Of what? Of what?
You are silly.
No, you are silly.
No, you are.
Do you have racial preferences when it comes to dating, or are you an equal opportunity barker?
Yes, now I am.
But before, what was...
I think I had kind of turned a little blind eye to the black guys for a little while.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they were at the time, they were the group that I felt hated me the most, that I would get the most unlove from.
So you had a penchant for light-skinned men?
Oh, I do like me a light-skinned man.
Oh, still?
Still.
Got it. Like, and what's a celebrity that comes to mind? Like Boris Kodjoe, or...
Boris is fine.
He's so hot.
He's very fine. What was the other one, though?
Michael Ealy,
Oh, he's fine, too.
Jesse
He is-
Williams,
He's fine, too.
Barack Obama.
He's fine, too.
It sounds like you just like men.
Yeah. That's it. Especially powerful men.
You like a powerful man.
I do.
So a dominant to your submissive.
I'm not submissive.
Could you be a trad wife is what
Certainly
I'm asking.
not.
Trad wife meaning like I'd be at home and take, no.
Like making Oreos from scratch.
I don't absolutely not.
Why not?
Because that's not who the I am. And my daddy didn't raise me like that.
To be a trad wife.
To be anybody's wife. My dad used to literally say that to me. I didn't raise you to be somebody's wife.
That's so brave.
I don't know if it's brave or smart. Most of the people that I know that's gotten married are divorced now.
And so really, that's an indictment of the institution.
Yeah. I think marriage is legalized slavery.
You do?
Yes, I do.
Say more, because if I'm thinking about slavery and I'm thinking about marriage, there are two different images that come
Absolutely
into my head.
not. I don't think, I don't know how you don't. A man is, especially if he's expecting you to be a trad wife, you might as well pull out a whip and a chain.
Wow. So there are young people watching who might be wanting to get married. What would you say to them?
Don't.
Don't get married.
No.
Okay.
Oh, God, you are crazy.
How am I crazy?
You are crazy.
You're saying that marriage is a...
No, I don't believe in the marriage. No, I don't.
So you wouldn't get married?
No, and I don't think it's beneficial for a woman at all.
She's so
have
triggered.
COVID. Everybody in you brought COVID to me. I have to shoot in
did not
Chicago.
bring no goddamn COVID to you.
And yet everyone on your team is coughing blood.
That's
I'm in the movie Contagion. Coming up, as a straight woman, which do you give less of a about, male rights or gay rights?
male rights.
Why?
Because them, they already got rights.
Would you say you hate men?
No, I don't hate men, but
Normally
I am
she says
disappointed.
Women's rights or gay rights, but she changed it to male rights this time. Interesting.
Why?
Because they're not stepping up to the plate. While we sat and grew and got our shit together, they sat on the couch and played their Sega Genesis.
What are you talking about?
They didn't try to grow. They didn't try to grow. They didn't try to better themselves. They, you know, we invented Oprah so we can get better.
Got it. We sat next to each other courtside
Yes,
at a
ma'am.
basketball game where you were given a disciplinary card to act appropriately.
I knew
What
you
did
was
the
gonna
card
do that.
say?
It says that you have to,
I have to read this. Conduct advisory. You are being issued a warning that the comments, gestures, and or behaviors that you have directed at the players, coaches, game officials, or other spectators constitute excessive verbal abuse or behavior that is disruptive or interferes with the game participant or another spectator and are in violation of the NBA fan code of conduct. This is the first and only warning that you will receive. After receiving this warning, you verbally
have some act.
You verbally abuse any player, coach, game official, or spectator or engage in behavior that is disruptive or interferes with the game participant or another spectator, you will be immediately ejected from the arena without refund. How often do they have to give these
Right,
out?
they're gonna throw you out.
What was the incident that prompted you to start getting this card?
Probably the way that I yell at the players and the referees and then jump up and almost run on the court. Yeah.
Yes. And I
You saw that, right?
No, I didn't want to put you on Front Street, but I did see you bark at a young man with an afro.
He was hot. And you knew that that was well in my right to do that.
And so it's interesting as you talk about how men should do better and get better. You're barking at a young 24-year-old doing their job.
Absolutely.
And
Doing
no
their
apologies
job.
to that.
None. I'm 58. I'm about to die. I should be able to do whatever I want.
And what's the logic there?
I'm 58 and I should be able to do what I want.
So if we could talk to camera, what can you do better to uplift the Black community and Black women?
I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, succeeding, so they can be able to look at a Black woman that's succeeding. I'm encouraging every Black woman, especially my age, to continue to get out there and do your thing.
It sounds like your activism is rooted in exclusively your own...
Absolutely. Who would it be rooted in else?
The community?
No.
Just
What
no.
community?
Just no.
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 I don't understand.
Face, no.
The question. Where's my publicist?
How many Black friends do you have?
Wow.
She's like,
You
why
should
did
ask
I
me how
come
many
here?
white friends I have, because I have less white friends than Black friends.
Okay.
All my friends are Black.
All of them.
Most of them, yeah.
Well, now you're changing your story.
No,
So what is the truth? Were you silent or were you silenced?
both.
Coming up,
I had no idea this was gonna be like this.
you had no preparation at all?
This is crazy.
So you've
Tom.
never engaged with my work at all, as a Black woman?
I watched it once, but it was a normal It was like
where
a
was it?
normal-
Who was it?
I don't know who it was, but I just
So
remember.
you did not watch an interview. And
I didn't watch the whole interview, okay?
wow, and so you're talking about breaking the glass ceiling and how men should do better, and you have a black woman sitting across from you, and you can't even think to engage with her work, and you're spreading COVID?
My career about to be over because I think I'm gonna attack this person.
And now you're threatening me?
Yeah, you better respect your elders, fine.
Oh, you're putting on your rings.
To be able to make a print on your forehead. Because
Leslie.
obviously we got beef.
We have no beef. You didn't know I existed until 20 minutes ago.
Okay, yeah, I never seen your show before.
I'm going to ask you about some Black American
He wasn't
icons,
able to
and
get
can
out
you
of
tell
that
me how
one.
you support them as sisters?
Okay.
Because Black Lives what?
Matter.
Candace Owens.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. So you want me to say something to support her? I like her hair. Her hair is always pretty.
Azalea Banks.
That's a rapper, right?
I don't know about that, but
I don't know. Listen,
Azalea
does she know
Banks
Marvin Gaye?
makes great music. Extremely
That's how old I am.
problematic.
Do you
Trumper
use Facebook still?
says homophobic
Absolutely
things
not.
sometimes, but also
just trying to
makes
get your
her career
age.
off of the queer
I'm
community.
58.
I'm trying to place it because that means 58 could be young 58 or it could be an older 58 that doesn't care about young pop culture icon.
I'm that.
Got it. Omarosa.
I like Omarosa. I noticed, she has an unpopular opinion, but I've met her a couple of times. She was really sweet.
And you've met me a couple of times, and yet.
And yet I don't like you. Yeah.
That's
wow.
the person
No, I think
that
this is a perfect way to
Tiffany
celebrate
Pollard
Black
cursed
History
out.
Month, Women's History Month, is to look
and the interview
down the
with
barrel
Tiffany
of
Pollard,
another
New
young,
York, that Z-Way did. We
upcoming
watched.
comedian in your craft who read your book, watched your special in preparation for an interview, and then
And you ain't asked me not
abuse
one
her.
question about none of it. You asked me the craziest questions.
What are other ways you uphold the police state? Do bisexuals exist? Did you know that I wrote a book?
I don't even know how to answer these questions. Oh my God, I'm gonna need therapy after this.
With your
Jewish white woman where I feel safe.
what words of encouragement do you have for America's youth?
Yo, take your time, man. Enjoy the journey instead of trying to get to the end so fast. You don't need to be a millionaire at 25. Your brain is not even fully developed. Enjoy the process. Enjoy your life. Enjoy smelling the roses. Because when you actually do make it to your goal, you're gonna be sad because you made it to your goal. That wasn't good?
I'm wondering what youth that's directed at. Is it Black young women?
And you said the youth, today's youth. So all of the youth.
Men?
All of the youth. Men are youth too.
This again.
You should be a person that interrogates people. Because you have me up.
What's your favorite Dr. Martin Luther
She's
King
not
quote?
easily rattled either.
Ew! I am ending this interview. Oh my gosh!
Girl, I would have came so different if I knew your ass was crazy like this.
Hopefully with a mask and some hand sanitizer.
No, I hope you caught the goddamn strand. A new strand of it. We call it the Ziwi.
You're wishing disease on me, a younger Black woman.
Yeah.
Do you feel good about this interview?
No. I do not. I do not feel good at all. I don't know what the you're gonna get out of this.
Leslie Jones, everyone. All right, we're done. Get out of here. Start ventilating this hall.
Leslie's very entertained.
Was it okay though?
No, that was hilarious. Are you kidding? I'm a hypochondriac.
Z-Way has nothing but respect for Madison Square Garden and its what? Organizations. She apologizes on behalf of Leslie Jones. Music. Z-Way looks forward to watching the Knicks in the playoffs. Hopefully, courtside. Hashtag Go Knicks. Iconic. She wasn't wrong. Oh, look, there's me. One of my videos. Not the most flattering thumbnail, I guess. Okay. So, Okay, let's get into AIDS United. Oh, I guess to finish talking about what we'll be going over today, we watched the Leslie Jones interview with Z-Way. Done and done. And then we're going to catch up on a little bit of current events and then talk about Orientalism and imperialist extraction. Because that is very prevalent with what is happening in the world at large, especially with how the US is behaving on the global stage, starting this senseless, idiotic war with Iran at the behest of Israel, and how there is this pattern of imperialist violence with extracting resources and wanting to have domination and not respecting the sovereignty of nation states. So I want to talk about that and how Orientalism in the media, Orientalism as a concept, has been used to manufacture consent for aggression against brown people, people in the Middle East, people in North Africa. So that is a very huge and prevalent issue right now, that we are seeing like this language of we are liberating them, the noble people of Iran, these same types of tropes that were used to justify civilizing, well, civilizing indigenous people in the US, and that just means genocide. So just justifying all of this violence with this bad faith framing of language. We know that fascists do this. Oh, there was this other video I was going to pull up. Just a sec. Rohan Davis, I really enjoy his content. He did a video on coffee that I want to watch. But first, just to make sure that we get to it, I want to finish the AIDS United training. So this is course number 3. Are these the same thing? Oh, yeah. Okay. I was getting confused between these two pages. Okay, so we finished course 1, 2. I don't know why they're listed in not order, but okay. Course 3, improving health outcomes through meaningful involvement of the LGBTQ plus community.
Welcome back to the Building Equity, Serving LGBTQ plus BIPOC Communities training series brought to you by AIDS United University. This e-learning series is made up of 3 interactive courses, and I will be guiding you through the 3rd course in the series entitled, Improving Health Outcomes Through Meaningful Involvement of the LGBTQ plus Community. This e-learning series was supported in part by a generous donation from Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson was not involved in the development, design, or coordination of the course content. AIDS United does not have any additional financial disclosures or conflicts of interest pertaining to the material presented in this course. Remember, you can complete this course in one sitting, or you can return to your course dashboard multiple times and pick up where you left off. If you have any questions or run into technical issues while navigating this platform, please don't hesitate to reach out by emailing the AIDS United e-learning team at education@aidsunited.org. Now that we have covered the features of the platform, let's review the purpose and objectives of this course. Improving health outcomes within LGBTQ+ communities will require addressing intersecting structural and systematic barriers with meaningful involvement of community. Barriers that link communities to negative health and social outcomes include environments that enhance poor health and life expectancy, low socioeconomic status, education, discrimination and stigma, and limited access to essential support services outside of healthcare. While achieving equitable health outcomes will require focusing on the previously mentioned factors associated with disparities, effectively directing resources and services to disproportionately affected populations and geographical regions will require meaningful community engagement and collaboration. The meaningful involvement of LGBTQ+ patients will improve health and social disparities while duly promoting the improvement of health outcomes with this community. This e-learning course will provide strategies on how to collaborate with communities to assess and address barriers
So we
that
got a
impact
different
community
narrator
health
this time.
outcomes.
Man.
During this e-learning course, we will discuss material that will support you and your organization's ability to strengthen understanding of tenets and considerations for meaningful involvement with LGBTQ+
So this is more
communities.
about
Demonstrate how
applying
to
the principles that
operationalize
we've
tenets
learned
of
so
meaningful
far.
involvement with your communities to improve health outcomes.
Introduction done. Woohoo.
Let's talk about truly understanding what meaningful involvement is and what it looks like in our communities.
Yes, let's.
As we look to understand meaningful involvement of people with HIV/AIDS, or MIPA, we can look at its origins in the movement. According to the JIPA report card, MIPA is described as meaningfully involving people living with HIV in programmatic, policy and funding decisions and actions that impact our lives by ensuring that we participate in important decisions. The JIPA report card tool was created and utilized to strengthen the capacity of interested parties to operationalize the community voices of people with HIV. Moreover, MIPA strategies inform the elements of community trust, humility, relationship building, and continuous commitment to sustained efforts on behalf of community. Meaningful community involvement is the act of cultivating engagement opportunities in a manner that gives the embraced community power in decision-making processes. It means thinking about the embraced community as a shared partner and shared leader in the work you provide. It means not moving forward with practices that impact your partner without input on whatever initiative you're working on together. Meaningful involvement.
It's best practice to, if you are doing a project on a particular group of people, especially as we were talking about like these healthcare systems. I used to work for the state government, projects for the government, but it really doesn't even matter what sector you're in. If you are making something or pursuing a project that has to do with a specific population, it is best to bring in that population from the very beginning and get their input as to how things should be done, why things should be done, what they think about it. And this is imperative in doing things in an ethical manner so that there aren't exploitative and traumatizing research practices and implementation that are discriminatory. It ensures that people have a say throughout the entire process. They should have a say throughout the entire process, constantly checking in and running things by people, and to have a diverse representation of the specific population that is being represented so that you get various perspectives. And of course, getting perspectives from what they call like stakeholders, people who are invested in the project or who will be impacted by the project. The people who are impacted the most by the project, guess what, are the subjects, the people who it is intended for. So these are the people that should have the most say. And unfortunately, often how things play out in real life is that people who are most impacted have the least say in what is impacting them. Surprise, surprise, this is the result of capitalism and building a society around the few rich people in the world who are imposing these conditions on everyone else. But that doesn't mean that we have to have buy-in to their system, that we can create the world that we want to see by actually acting in ways that helps to create it. And this realizes that future by acting so that we are working collaboratively together and not speaking down to people or to people, but with people.
Means that your community partners come to the table as equals in spaces set for bi-directional learning and result in visible and sustainable outcomes and builds rapport between community and agency. We also must note what meaningful involvement is not. Meaningful involvement is not
Finish
tokenism.
this, by the
Many
way.
times, the pursuit of creating equitable spaces results in tokenism. Tokenism refers to the concept of taking actions to present the organization as an equal and equitable facility to prevent criticism or meet a quota. For example, hiring a person of color for their expertise on a temporary project, or having the same transgender individual be the face of every poster or speak on every panel intended to represent the transgender community.
Yep.
Without inclusion, diverse representation is a superficial solution that becomes tokenism. In turn, tokenism exploits community members and fail to make any significant change and deepen medical mistrust. Tokenism in itself is a form of discrimination. Diversity refers to the full range of human differences, including traits like cultural differences, age, race and ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, disabilities, economic status. Diversity amongst LGBTQA+ individuals should be visible in the planning and implementation of services. Diversity and inclusion together enhance the culture of an organization, promotes the community's value, all while increasing community members' health outcomes. Inclusion sits at the center of meaningful involvement. Engaging BIPOC LGBTQ+ individuals in a manner that is truly meaningful requires inclusion. Inclusion is the practice or policy of providing equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might otherwise be excluded or marginalized.
It's like these definitions that the fascists in power in the US, but I mean, around the globe who subscribe to this kind of belief, especially when it comes to white supremacy and religious ethnic nationalism, is that inclusion really just means that we actually see people for people and that everyone matters. Everyone should be included. Everyone should be factored in. And this includes policy, because policy, as boring as it sounds, is what makes up the fabric of our society. And good policy creates social safety nets, creates opportunities, it distributes wealth, it provides resources, as it states here. And harmful policy can have any number of harms that disenfranchises people, that makes it so that they are even more marginalized and exploited. There are so many examples of how it can be harmful, but we have the possibility of creating policy and implementing policy that is inclusive, that represents a diverse pool of people, a pluralist society that we're living in, multicultural, that meets all of our needs, that says, you all matter. You're a human being, you live here, you matter. That means that you should have these kinds of resources, because there are people who are buying up all of the resources and are hoarding them and are making it so it is extremely hard to live, and we need to put a leash on them.
This includes creating spaces where they feel respected, valued, and seen for who they are as individuals. This will require a conscious level of supportive energy and commitment from leaders, colleagues, and others, so that we individually and collectively can do our best work to improve health outcomes and overall quality of life. Take a moment to reflect on your experiences in your roles as a healthcare or public health provider. What does meaningful inclusion look like in your place of work? What should it look like? What is your role in bringing inclusion to the workforce? Take a few moments to share your thoughts in the discussion thread and read what others have shared.
All right, let's look at the discussions. Inclusion. As a student in third year of registered nursing college, I had to make a presentation about HIV, and at the end of it, I was surprised how much information I have shared in the class, as my fellow class students would not choose a subject like HIV or hepatitis C or HPV. To get at the point of none of them knew about prevention prep and what U equals U means. So I was happy I got to share what I learned and how much being HIV positive taught me in life and struggle I had to go through. At the end, it still is sad that in Europe, in some countries, PrEP is unavailable to people. Yeah, that's a travesty. I don't know what this means. What does U equals U mean? Okay, what does undetectable equals untransmittable? There we go. I'm learning something new. Explaining how the sexual transmission of HIV can be stopped. If it's undetectable, it's untransmittable. Okay. I had never seen that before. I mean, I knew the concept, but not the shorthand for it. Thank you, Mio Drag, for this input, and congratulations on attending nursing school. It's astounding to see how PrEP access is still a major barrier. This is vital in closing the health gaps, particularly for marginalized communities. Thank you for sharing your lived experience. I have a feeling that your presentation made a significant impact, one that might change the way your colleagues treat patients and live their own lives. Exactly. It's important. Another reason why it is so important to have people with lived experience in these spaces. I've been advocating for housing for PLHIV a while now, and I am very passionate about it. Housing is a form of healthcare, yes. That is very much needed in the BIPOC, LGBTQ plus community and HIV communities. Last year, I caught the attention of Representative Cindy Hyde Smith of Mississippi with her. Yeah. Wait, is that Mississippi? Because Missouri's MO. Just revealing my trouble with the state acronyms. With her help, I was able to get months of HOPWA funds distributed out to the participants. The proliferation of acronyms in our society is a barrier to knowledge. I understand we use it for shorthand to make things more quick and efficient, but is it really that efficient when we don't know what people are saying? Oh, so this is his responses, Mark's. I've made positive changes within my organization with the education program for women to include women of trans experiences, voices, engagement, and leading the program. This is important, Teresa. Thank you for sharing. I have been advocating here in Middle South Georgia for places of business, private, public, to be more inclusive for the transgender communities. I am happy to say that after advocating for my community, we are now going to get a chance to go before the city council and express the needs for our concerns for any business to be inclusive and not exclusive on the basis of bias. I also understand that this is a great opportunity for businesses to listen and create plans for community members to be a part of the process of creating policies to help with health equity across the city. Bringing PLW HIV AIDS into people living with HIV, bringing people living with HIV AIDS into rooms and spaces where decisions are made, allowing our voices to be heard and believed by placing value on people with lived experience. An example is the HIV caucus and PACHA. I don't know what PACHA means. Absolutely, Brooke. Bringing people living with HIV to the table is so important as it helps with people with lived experiences voices be heard. Oh, I already read that one. I am from Eagle Pass with Eagle Pass Safe, and I love how all our voices are heard no matter what sexuality you are. I think inclusion should look like involvement without any exclusion. My role, I believe, is to show no matter educated or not, trans or not, male, female, we are all the same in one way. We all want better for our small town. Thank you for sharing, Kimberly. Hope that this training has been helpful in your learning process. It has.
As we continue to build on our understanding of meaningful involvement, we have to understand the essential importance in building relationships and partnership with trust. Building a relationship with community is an activity of continuous trust building. This component focuses on establishing an understanding of the communities where stronger and more dynamic partnerships are desired. This understanding should be rooted in an awareness of the diversity of community cultures, intersectional identities, social determinants of health, historical traumas and mistrust, and what community groups need to experience to feel meaningfully engaged in the process. This component is essential as it lays the foundation of continuous work around trust maintenance and relationship building. It also provides a platform to reaffirm that community voices are valued and will be included and operationalized. Some of the intended outcomes include outlining a roadmap for partnerships rooted in equity, assessment and planning work, establishing what trust looks like, communicating the work in a way that is accessible and understandable, and creating pathways to dialogue on what the operationalization, collaborative activities can be in its most effective form. Let's look at how we can implement MIPA. Here we have some pre-steps or pre-implementation of building meaningful community relationships and partnerships. The way we begin building relationships will vary based on the population. However, there are 5 general steps to help ensure the start of success. 1. Determine what is valuable to the community and build from that. 2. Identify potential intersections and create conversations that address barriers to communication and access to care. 3. Consider practical exercises and resources that are at the core of the community's values. 4. Continue to be consistent and continuous with community to build into trust and sustainability. 5. Ensure you allow time and space for staff to really engage and build relationships with community.
All right. So continuing. What is meaningful involvement? Getting community feedback when convenient. The act of cultivating engagement opportunities in a manner that gives the embraced community power in decision-making processes. Tokenism, going to one trusted community member for guidance. Obviously B. Continue.
Now that we have defined and begin to understand the origins of meaningful involvement, but also the work that must be done prior to putting it into action, let's look at what operationalizing and sustaining relationships and involvement strategies look like. Engaging the BIPOC LGBTQ+ communities can take many forms, from not engaging at all, to having programming entirely led by community members. Think of this as a spectrum of different ways to engage people with lived experiences. Spectrum is a way to think of things existing on a scale, rather than taking a one-size-fits-all approach to providing health and public services. While consistent inclusion in program development, delivery, and decision-making is essential to improving health outcomes, the work is truly informed by lived experience and expertise. In the figure above, you will see an example of 5 levels of meaningful community engagement among people with lived experiences. They are: inform, ask, involve, collaborate, empower. This framework was adopted from a toolkit called Meaningful Engagement of People with Lived Experiences, created by the Global Fund to End Modern Slavery and National Survivor Network. Let's now look at each of these levels in greater depth.
All right. Continuing.
At the inform level, work to keep BIPOC LGBTQA+ individuals informed about decisions that impact them. This is not lived experience leadership, but it creates transparency, one of the principles of trauma-informed practice. However, it creates conditions that increase the agency of people with lived experience. When impacted people have access to plain language, clear, and accurate information about programs, policies, and research, they are better able to form and share their own opinions on both personal and community levels. When impacted people are informed, they are less dependent on third-party supporters to help them make choices about their care and safety. Informed participants can create their own policy recommendations and their own talking points. At the ask level, organizations should intentionally seek out and review feedback from the members of BIPOC LGBTQ+ communities and incorporate it when possible. This is a common way to engage people with lived experience in review of existing policies, programs, and research. While many organizations may bring on consultants with lived experience to review and provide feedback of projects in progress or being implemented, an often overlooked but essential way to seek out crucial feedback is through meaningful and ethical engagement with your current patients and staff who identify being of lived experience. Ask them what they need to be successful, or what the barriers are to their safety, healing, and access to care. Ask them how your programs or work culture is meeting their needs and how they could be improved. Have a plan in place for soliciting, receiving, and acting on critical feedback so that you can continually improve your work. While some engagement at this level may be uncompensated, surveys that take longer than 5 to 10 minutes, focus groups.
Yeah, and once you get feedback, how about listen? Listen to feedback. and actually make a plan to apply the feedback if it is appropriate and pertinent. I mean, not all feedback will be related, but, and there is various types of quality of feedback that people can get, can give, and also receive, but it must be taken into account is if you are actually asking people for their input, take it seriously. This is a huge thing that I saw working for the government is that people said that they wanted feedback, but they didn't actually. They just wanted people to say, "Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. We're so indebted to you," rather than being like, this is a problem. Can you fix this?" And then people getting defensive. That is very harmful, and it harms the people who are in the process. It means that the end product won't be as good and as effective. So it's like it is ethical in so many ways to actually be incorporating people throughout the entire process.
And document review should always be compensated. At the involved level, BIPOC LGBTQ+ communities are engaged throughout planning and implementation to consider their concerns and ensure the incorporation of their feedback. This means that impacted people are brought in from the beginning of envisioning the project plan or funding proposal to ensure that the foundations of the work are solid and that there is a process for them to engage with the project team on an ongoing basis to provide feedback on the progress and provide final review. At this level, it is expected and customary to compensate people with lived experience for their time. At the collaboration level, the organization works closely with BIPOC LGBTQ+ people on each aspect of program development and implementation, from exploring options to making final decisions. This level of engagement within an organization would mean community partners are well represented among your employees. At a programmatic, community, or regional level, it means that your organization collaborates with partner organizations or initiatives that are led by people with lived experience and that have a high level of meaningful lived experience engagement. For example, your organization can collaborate with community partners as members of your quality management team. At the empower level, BIPOC LGBTQ+ individuals have final decision-making power over policies, programming, research, and implementation. Organizations will implement the strategies and decisions people from the embraced community develops. While this level of engagement can be ideal, it may not be ideal for every project. For example, we may only want a team of people with lived experience developing a protocol for how early intervention staff will interact with patients if they also have healthcare knowledge, training, and skills. Here are some examples of how the levels of the meaningful engagement spectrum can be used to involve individuals within the BIPOC LGBTQ+ communities. Note that different activities and principles are exercised under each tenet. Inform. Fact sheets, newsletters, and websites are in plain language and accessible to people of differing abilities and accessible in the languages spoken by your community members. Provide transparency in advance about how feedback is used and incorporated. Create an engaging and plain language impact report. Ask. Consistently survey community partners about their experiences, including staff. Conduct focus groups with clientele and staff. Compensate people for their time. Involve. Establish paid lived experience advisory councils. Hire consultants and staff with lived experiences that have ongoing input. Collaborate.
Hiring practices are huge. It's one thing to want to do a project that involves a particular group of people, particular community, but it is another to actually employ people and have them be part of the project from the very beginning. It's not just bringing people in, being like, "Oh, we're doing you a service. Thank you. We need your input." And then sending them on their way. It helps to actually have people be part of the organization, the entity that is doing the project, so that they can inform the project from the very beginning, in addition to the community people that are being brought into the project and who are giving their input. You look hot. Thank you. Ooh. I don't know. I appreciate it.
Develop and implement internal leadership equity initiative. Employ people within community as contractors and staff without expecting them to share their story. Empower. Programs or projects are led by LGBTQ+ experiences. A meaningful percentage of BIPOC LGBTQ+ people are represented in all levels of your organization. Take a few moments to reflect on your organization's current levels of engagement. Then, head to the discussion board and share your ideas. Which levels of the meaningful involvement spectrum do you currently excel in? Which levels of engagement could your organization improve in? What are some examples of how your organization is currently engaging at each level of the meaningful engagement spectrum? Share as much or as little as you feel comfortable sharing. Once you add your thoughts to the discussion thread, take a moment to review what others have written.
All right. Shall we look at the discussion questions? Let's see. I feel like everything I learned within this video will be key within my daily life because it is so important to be involved, ask questions, be a part of collaboration, and empowering those around you. I think I could improve and ask because sometimes I feel a little scared to ask various questions. Yeah, that can be hard. Or knowing if you're going to say the right thing, you don't want to hurt people's feelings, but it's like if you go in trying to humanize people and go in with good intentions, that is what matters. I mean, clearly good intentions don't always translate to acting in an appropriate way, but if you are mindful, that's what matters. I like the collaborate spectrum because it allows individuals to come together and support each other as they put together their ideas and thoughts for the better good of the community. I believe I excel in the inform and collaborate level because since I am the only PLE with SUD, substance use disorder, not many person living with experience is what PLE means. Not many know how the new world of trap houses and are now how to keep track of the homeless in our town. I love being able to give my team the knowledge they need from the street so they can better expand their help and outreach and understand how to communicate with people having trouble with substance use disorders, or if contact can be made by them, it will better be made by someone like me. There was one of them still am on my sobriety road. I believe my team can work on how to shift to empower to all learn how to be able to have leadership and let everyone feel how good it is to be empowered and not get too overwhelmed when it's your turn to lead. Yeah, it helps when people have this lived experience, they can speak from a personal perspective. And they also have connections and can bring in more people. I excel. Oh, wait. We already did. Actually, no. We just found out that a couple of people said I excel. Okay. I excel in the collaborative spectrum because it is very important that individuals with lived experiences are working collectively with staff and other community members to make sure that our point of view is being told during these focus groups and surveys. I believe that our organization can improve with the informed stage because not too many people come out and discuss those decisions that impact them because of previous trauma experiences from places that were meant to help but hurt the clients. That's very real. Right now, we are working on Ask Spectrum. We are asking community to share experiences and help us compile that information so we can share the data to explain to healthcare providers that the level of care is not meeting the expectation of the patients that are seeking out services. That's really cool. Does anyone have examples of what a survey would look like? Interesting. Okay, continuing on. Let's continue to identify some ways you or your organization can put meaningful involvement into practice to establish or improve engagement with members of the BIPOC LGBTQ+ community. Download the Meaningful Involvement Action Plan to identify specific ideas for how you or your organization can establish or improve meaningful involvement of the BIPOC LGBTQ+ community. So what is this? Oh, we have another little handout. This is the one that we went over yesterday. That was really helpful, this power and privilege wheel, to understand where people are at in terms of marginalization in society. All right. Since I'm not representing an organization. What is not a level of meaningful community engagement among people with lived experiences? Tell. Yes. What are ways that you can operationalize meaningful involvement? Check all that apply. Making decisions without community input? No. Make sure all communication, including fact sheets and newsletters, are in accessible language. Create programs led by people of LGBTQ plus experiences. Establish paid lived experience advisory councils and staff. Yay! 100%.
So we have talked about
Moving
operationalizing
along.
meaningful involvement strategies. Let's discuss what it looks like to sustain those strategies and relationships. Sustaining means making community engagement a permanent component of an organization's work culture and structure.
So
Organizations providing healthcare and public health services should ensure that people across the organization are building partnerships. In the event of staff turnover, this can help ensure that there are no gaps in involvement and relationship building, and that partnerships are sustained beyond any one individual. It is important to note that sustained community relationships reflect diversity within the community, recognition of intersectionality and corresponding stigmas, equity in accessing resources and outcomes, continuous inclusion of all community partners. But what happens when we must consider more than just these tenets? When we have intersecting stigmas, identities, and social indicators that impact the ways in which we engage and sustain our rapport with community.
All right, moving on to sustaining health equity work to address inequities. Ugh, sustaining it in this fascist moment is really bleak, but good to still
As we
talk
reflect
about.
on what we have learned in this course, let's keep at the forefront why it is so critical to build health
Maybe
equity
even
for BIPOC
more important to be
LGBTQ+
talking about.
communities. Historically, people who experience marginalization, specifically those who identify as both BIPOC and LGBTQ+, fare worse across a number of health and social determinants of health measures when compared to white, heterosexual, and/or cisgender people. This image reflects findings from an ongoing study by the Kaiser Family Foundation, updated March 15, 2023. The analysis found that people who identified as Black, Hispanic, American Indian, and Native Alaskan fared worse than white people across the majority of examined measures of health and healthcare and social determinants of health. Some key findings were: non-elderly American Indian and Alaska Native and Hispanic people were more than twice as likely as their white counterparts to be uninsured as of 2021. Among adults with any mental illness, Black, Hispanic, and Asian adults were less likely than white adults to receive mental health services as of 2021. Roughly, 6 in 10 Hispanic, Black, and American Indian and Alaska Native adults went without a flu vaccine in the 2021 to 2022 season, compared to less than half of white adults. At birth, American Indian and Alaska Native and Black people had a shorter life expectancy compared to white people, and as of 2021, American Indian and Alaska Native, Hispanic, and Black people experienced larger declines in life expectancy than white people between 2019 and 2021.
Yeah.
Black infants were more than 2 times as likely to die as white infants, and American Indian and Alaska Native infants were nearly twice as likely to die as white infants as of 2021. Black and American Indian and Alaska Native women also had the highest rates of pregnancy-related mortality.
When we talk about the importance of policy and how it is implemented, including people, not further marginalizing or exploiting people, it is to prevent these situations. Policy creates subgroups of dignity and ostracizes people so that these political forces can demonize people and so that they can also be exploited. But this is intentional and avoidable. This is the importance of policy implementation and why we need to have representatives who are interested in policy that includes all of us, that actually sees us as human beings, because the result of all of this historical trauma and harm is this, in addition to the harmful policies that have been implemented. So they all work together to lead to these outcomes. It is the intention. It is not because marginalized people just experience negative health outcomes because of who we are. And I mean, it's not that we inherently experience them because of these arbitrary things, but because there are people in charge who have imposed these conditions to, through policy, to lead to these kinds of health outcomes.
Black and Hispanic children were over twice as likely to be food insecure than white children as of 2021. It's important to remember that people identifying as both BIPOC and LGBTQ+ represent the many factions of community. Unfortunately, they tend to face cultural and societal challenges that come from being part of both communities. This means that they are at a heightened risk of being subject to both homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, and/or misogyny as well as racism simultaneously and at different times throughout life.
Yeah, ableism.
This is an example of intersectionality. Before we proceed, we must note that intersectionality, a theory introduced by Kimberly Crenshaw, is defined as the complex cumulative way in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, and classism, combine, overlap, or intersect, especially in the experiences of marginalized individuals or groups. For a deeper dive into this concept, please visit our e-learning course, The Current State of Health Equity. Let's look at some data that highlights this type of intersectional discrimination. In 2020, the Center for American Progress surveyed 1,528 LGBTQ+ identifying individuals on their experiences with discrimination in a variety of settings. Results from the survey showed that 24% of BIPOC LGBTQ+ respondents reported some form of negative or discriminatory treatment from a doctor or healthcare provider in the year prior, compared to 17% of white LGBTQ+ respondents. 21% of BIPOC LGBTQ+ respondents reported avoiding getting necessary services for themselves or their family to avoid discrimination, compared to 17% of white LGBTQ+ respondents. 48% of BIPOC LGBTQ+ respondents have an income below $40,000 a year, compared to 41% of white LGBTQ+ respondents. 68% of transgender people of color reported negative or discriminatory treatment from a doctor or healthcare provider, compared to 27% of white transgender respondents.
Yep. Look, do you see how big that difference is? 68% versus the 27. That is huge. This really goes to show it's like people who are trans and white, like I have light skin, I am Indian, but I am white passing. A lot of the time people assume that I'm white, and so I do not receive a lot of the discrimination that many other trans people do. And this is a byproduct of white supremacy, colonization, and how it is integrated into the medical systems, but also and society, but in our sense of humanity in how we are viewing one another, that these individual people who make up the healthcare system, and all of these systems for that matter, have their own biases, have their own prejudices, and this is also how harm can be perpetuated.
By building our awareness of this intersectional discrimination faced by BIPOC LGBTQ+ patients, as well as how we can address social determinants of health, practice cultural humility, and meaningfully involve community, public health practitioners can transform and strengthen their capacity to advance health equity. As we conclude this training series and aim to improve health equity among our BIPOC LGBTQ+ patients and the wider community, it's important to note that we continue to emphasize certain concepts and reflection exercises. As we think about sustaining meaningful involvement that may have intersectional considerations, remember to always ask yourself and your organization, what does acknowledging and valuing lived and living experiences mean? What does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean in community relationships? What does an intersectional approach mean? What are the benefits of community relationships? What does it mean for staff to be responsible and accountable for community relationships?
All right. Moving along. You completed operationalizing and sustaining meaningful involvement strategies. Woohoo!
Let's review what we've learned in this course. Through awareness of how to better incorporate social determinants of
Let's
health,
review.
public health practitioners can transform and strengthen their capacity to advance health equity. Meaningful involvement promotes health equity and improves health outcomes. It takes diversity and inclusion to meaningfully engage with embraced communities, otherwise, it's tokenism. There are 5 levels of meaningfully engaging people with lived experience, including inform, ask, involve, collaborate, and empower. Once we meaningfully engage community, we can adopt strategies to sustain this engagement. Congratulations on completing the Improving Health Outcomes Through Meaningful Involvement of the LGBTQ+ Community Year-11 course.
Yay!
If you completed the series sequentially, this course concludes the Building Equity, Serving LGBTQ+ BIPOC Communities training series. Congratulations on completing the series. Please click Complete and Continue at the bottom of your screen. A message will then be displayed in the center of your screen directing you to go to your dashboard. From there, you can access any of the additional courses in the series. If you have questions about any of the course content, please reach out to us at education@aidsunited.org. We hope to see you in another AIDS United University offering soon.
All right. We finished. I'm just answering this questionnaire. Okay. After completing the course, how would you rate your knowledge of HIV and its comorbidities in syndemics and syndemics? Improved. All right. Moving along. There are so many of these questions. Okay. Going to the dashboard. This is the course. If you are interested in going through these yourself, here is the link and you can sign up. Oh, whoops. Did that actually go? There we go. All right. So, moving along. I don't really want to watch this. Maybe I'll do that on my own time. I'll do that on my own time. We'll see if we get around to it. If I do, great. If not, whatever. This is introducing the AI Data Center Moratorium Act, and I am very curious about this. I think this is needed, but I am not familiar with the details, so let us learn.
And I are going to be chatting about an enormously important issue. Let me start off by saying that in my view, and in the view of people who know a lot more about this issue than I do, we are at the beginning of the most profound technological revolution in world history, period. The most profound technological revolution in world history, a revolution that will bring unimaginable changes to our society in a relatively short period of time. Artificial intelligence and robotics will impact our economy, our democracy, our privacy rights, our emotional well-being, our environment, and even our very survival as human beings on this planet.
Yeah,
the scale,
certainly.
scope, and speed
That's
of
my
this
opinion as
transformation will be unprecedented. According to Demis, Hasibas, who is the head of Google DeepMind, the AI revolution will be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and 10 times faster. In other words, AI and robotics will have 100 times impact in terms of what the Industrial Revolution did. And it's not just what AI companies are saying, it's what they are doing. This year alone, 4 major AI companies are expected to spend roughly $670 billion building data centers and tens of billions more on research and development. Despite the extraordinary importance of this issue and its impact on every man, woman, and child in this country, AI has received far too little serious discussion here in our nation's capital. I fear that Congress is totally unprepared for the magnitude of the changes that are already taking place.
Yeah, and this is intentional because we have seen all of the AI oligarchs really put pressure on Congress, especially the Republicans, but including Democrats. Let's be honest, establishment Democrats are the other side of this fascist coin, where they are being soft on all of these regulations, that they were not wanting to add even more to the big, beautiful bill. The administration keeps wanting to have no regulations on AI because guess who's running the administration and the world? It's these oligarchs who are really just trying to enrich themselves even further and essentially displace a human workforce with robots. That's what they're trying to do. And we have to put a stop to it. So even though they are saying like we need to regulate it better, I think we just need to destroy it. That's my opinion. I've seen too many things, too many of these science fiction dystopian pieces of art and media that I'm like, I don't think anything good can come from artificial intelligence.
While Congress has not
especially with
paid attention,
humans who are running it and the kinds of humans who are running it.
According to a recent poll, 79% of voters are concerned that the government does not have a plan to protect workers from AI job losses.
Yeah.
That same poll also found
I need to step out for a sec, but I'll be right back. I'll keep this playing.
That 56% of voters, majority of voters, are concerned about losing their job or having someone in their family lose their jobs in the next year. Not in the next 10 years, in the next year.
She's with her face all covered.
Why are
so cute.
the American people so concerned? And the answer is they have a lot of reasons to be concerned. They understand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, when the billionaire class has never, ever had it so good, some 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. And the American people understand that the AI revolution, these massive investments, are being driven by some of the wealthiest people in our country and the world, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Larry Ellison. They understand that these billionaires are investing huge amounts of money into AI and robotics, not to improve life for working families, but to dramatically increase their own wealth and power. Do you think the average American is sitting around trusting that the multi-billionaires are going to transform society for the good of ordinary people? I don't think so. In terms of the impact that AI and robotics will have on working people, let us listen to what the tech oligarchs themselves are saying. Not the Congresswoman, not me. Let's hear what the tech oligarchs are themselves saying. Elon Musk, who has made massive investments in AI and robotics, has stated, and I quote, AI and robots will replace all jobs. That's about it. Replace all jobs. Bill Gates, another massive, who's also made massive investments, has said humans, quote, won't be needed for most things, end quote. And Mustafa Suleyman of Microsoft AI predicts that most white-collar work could be automated within the next decade. What we are talking about, therefore, is the possibility that AI and automation could displace tens of millions of workers in the United States from their current employment. We are already seeing early signs of this transformation, with declining employment in AI, exposed occupations, and growing difficulty for young people entering the workforce. If machines can perform most economically valuable work better than humans, and that is the goal, that machines will be able to do the job you are doing better than you are doing. If that happens, pretty simple question, what happens to the workers? How do people earn a living? How do they support their families? And how do programs like Social Security and Medicare survive without a stable tax base? People are not working, they're not paying taxes. And let me ask a very simple question that is on the minds of millions of Americans. How will workers who lose their jobs find new employment if there are no jobs available? What happens to the over 6 million truck drivers, cab drivers, rideshare drivers, and bus drivers if virtually all transportation is conducted through driverless vehicles, which under present terms seems likely to happen? What happens to the young college graduates who today going out looking for an entry-level job, but that job is not there? And let me say this, maybe from personal experience. I have seen this before, and the American working class has seen this process play out before. In the 1990s, the working class of this country was told by the corporate world, by the elites, by the corporate media, don't worry about unfettered free trade. My God, NAFTA, PNTR with China, it is going to create millions and millions of good-paying jobs. Man, Democrats, Republicans, corporate executives, everybody came together. Free trade, going to be the best thing that ever happened to American workers. Well, not quite. What happened, in fact, is that thousands and thousands of factories in this country were shut down. And what happened is that millions of workers lost their jobs. So we have seen this play out in the past. But when we talk about AI and robotics, we're not just talking about the economy. AI is already reshaping how we as human beings relate to each other. According to a recent poll by Common Sense Media, 72% of American teenagers say they have used AI for companionship, and more than half do so regularly. What does it mean for young people to form friendships with AI and become more and more lonely and isolated from other human beings? Everybody understands we have a major mental health crisis for our young people right now. I fear that AI could make it even worse.
I'm back. I just heard him say AI making mental health worse for youth. Yes. And adults. Everyone. And we know that there are all of these deep fakes and AI being used to make it so there are these apps where kids are doing, like, creating nudes of their classmates. That's a huge problem that's happening right now. As if going through adolescence, being a poor pubescent in fascist America isn't hard enough as it is right now. You also have to worry that your classmates may be sending out these fake nudes of you on social media everywhere. Like, that is so nightmarish.
And then when we talk about what's going on, we also have to talk about
And it's
privacy.
being used for enforcement with ICE.
Larry Ellison, second richest person on earth, who's gobbling up a lot of the media in this country, who is a major investor in AI, predicts an AI-powered surveillance state is coming where, this is Larry Ellison, major investor, this is what he says, where citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that is going on, end quote. That's your phone calls, your texts, your emails, the websites that you visit, it will be recorded.
Yeah, where's the don't
continue
tread
the
on me
current
crowd
trends.
with all of this
Further,
bullshit?
AI
right?
is undermining American democracy. The rise of deep fakes, where you have very convincing fake images. It happened to me. I don't know if it happened to you. All right. Where they had me selling some rebates or something like that. Looked very good. Almost convinced me, but it wasn't me. We're seeing fake videos, fake audios. What happens when a day before the election, somebody who looks like the candidate gets up and says something outrageous and people believe it? If people cannot trust what they see and hear, informed decision-making becomes nearly impossible. It will become harder and harder to distinguish between truth and untruth. There's also,
and it already
what we're
is.
seeing now, a significant environmental cost. AI requires enormous computing power,
I think I'm gonna do
driving the
various
expansion of energy and
greens
water-intensive data
for a
centers,
bracelet.
increasing electricity demand, and potentially deepening reliance on fossil fuels in the midst of a climate crisis. Finally, and let me say this, and I know some people out there may still think this is science fiction, but it ain't. I have talked to some of the leading scientists and most knowledgeable people in the world about the potential existential threats that AI brings to the human race, including Geoffrey Hinton. Some of you may know that Dr. Hinton, who is a Nobel Prize winner in physics, he's considered to be the godfather of AI. He's worked on this thing for decades. They have cautioned us that AI could soon surpass human intelligence and operate independently beyond our control.
Hello. This is why we need to destroy AI. We need to destroy AI.
And if that happens, what they acknowledge is it poses a profound threat to the very survival of the human race. So, what is happening in Washington right now in response to all of these enormous concerns? Well, we learned just today that Donald Trump has appointed a commission which is made up of the very people who are going to financially benefit from AI and robotics, including some of the wealthiest people in the world, like Mr. Ellison, Mr. Zuckerberg, and the video CEO, Jensen Huang. And needless to say, there is no representation on that commission of workers or environmentalists or consumers. And that is why, in my view, we need a very different approach. Across the country, communities are already pushing back against the unchecked expansion of data centers. More than 100 localities have enacted moratoriums or restrictions, and states are beginning to take action as well. Importantly, and this is a very important point, leaders within the AI industry have called for a pause. The guys who know the most about the threats of the development of AI and robotics, they have called for a pause. In 2023, just about 3 years ago, over 1,000 experts, including Elon Musk, called for AI labs to, quote, immediately pause for at least 6 months, end quote. And if such pause were not enacted, and clearly a pause was not enacted, they called on governments, quote, to step in and institute a moratorium. They understood what is at stake. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I understand what is at stake. That is why today we are announcing legislation to impose a moratorium on the construction of new AI data centers until strong national safeguards are in place to ensure that AI is safe and effective. That means the government reviews and approves AI products before they are released. Further, that the economic gains of AI and robotics will benefit ordinary Americans and not just the billionaire owners of the industry.
Yeah.
Further, that AI data centers do not increase electricity or utility prices, harm communities, or destroy the environment. Importantly, this legislation would also impose a ban on the export of AI chips to any country without such protections, including China. A moratorium will give us time. Time to understand the risks, time to protect working families, time to defend our democracy, and time to ensure that this technology works for all of us, not just the few. So, with that, let me now introduce the Congresswoman from New York, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. First and foremost, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to Senator Sanders for bringing us together today to introduce this critical legislation. Within just a matter of short years, AI has become often forcibly integrated into many aspects of American existence, into our doctors' offices,
correct,
our government, and oftentimes to the detriment of working people. Last year alone, AI was responsible for over 54,000 layoffs nationwide. And when we talk about those jobs, it's not just a number. These are industries, these are communities, these are families. You know, just a few short years ago, Sam Altman came before Congress. And in a direct plea, he begged us to regulate this industry. He said that these tools were under no circumstances ready, nor should they be integrated into weapons of war. That we must impose severe regulations immediately to prevent mass layoffs and to ensure that any productivity that comes of this industry can benefit working people. 3 short years later, none of that has happened, and in fact, in many cases, the opposite has happened. I'll start with another quote from Sam Altman, who said 10 years ago, "AI will probably lead to the end of the world. But in the meantime, there will be great companies created with serious machine learning." While I'm happy that Mr. Altman is responsible on his end of the deal, you know, he has his responsibilities on the company side. Our responsibility is to take care of people. And that is what we're here to do today. Unfortunately, the leaders of this industry have repeated time and time again that they view working people as an endless, untapped market to be manipulated and exploited, that they would sell our country out if it meant that they could turn a profit. And it is no surprise that in the 4 years since ChatGPT was released, we have seen AI deployed at a massive scale to create Big Brother-like surveillance. Yes. Every day, Americans are seeing videos of ICE agents waving phones into crowds, threatening that if they use their First Amendment rights, U.S. citizens using their First Amendment rights, that they will be added to some vague database that the American people have not consented to nor are knowledgeable about.
This is why when we go to protests, we need to wear face masks, right? They are creating a database and we have to protect ourselves. Do we know how and what they're going to do with this? I mean, track people, probably, like send them to these detention centers. That's what they have been doing. But like the information they have, who knows how far it will extend. It's like they already have our healthcare records, what the Doge idiots were doing. And now all of our faces are being compiled in this database, especially people who go to protests frequently, and they are targeting these people. That is how and why they killed Alex Preddy. is that they were tracking him because he had been at other protests. They knew who he was. That is very clear from what we have found out so far about the situation. But they're investigating it federally. So we aren't getting more information, and we need more information. They're actively hindering investigations, the federal government is, and from the state conducting their own investigations. Wear masks.
Companies like Palantir are mining endlessly the data and privacy of the American people, keeping track of everything that they say and do, and sending it all to a militarized and centralized government. When you take the subway, when you share a TikTok, when you talk to your Alexa at home, they are collecting your data and figuring out new ways to weaponize it. And now they are using AI tools to automate this so that it is not only pervasive, but that it is effortless. We must sound the alarm now. And because of this surveillance of the American people is not going to stop, we must stop it. All of this harm has occurred not in spite of, but because of the absence of federal legislation to regulate AI.
Yes,
This
exactly.
is not my first bill around AI, and I can tell you that it is extremely discouraging to see how even the most minute efforts to protect people at some of the smallest and most basic level, like trying to prevent AI-generated child pornography, is still
Yes.
combated, oftentimes by many people here on the Hill and throughout industry. In this story,
Call it out.
currently, the story of AI is a story of corruption. It is fueled and funded by the same multi-billion-dollar corporations lobbying politicians to sit back and do nothing while they harm our communities. In fact, one of the largest explosions of super PAC and outside funding is by the AI industry. And for years, Congress has enabled this permission structure, a permission structure that allows billionaires like Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and Peter Thiel to be trusted to regulate themselves under the guise of, quote, American innovation.
Yeah, Nazis.
And what are they asking for now? Endless energy. These companies are now so desperate to profit off of the AI boom that they are racing to construct thousands of giant AI data centers and jacking up the utility costs of everyday Americans to pay for it. These data centers power thousands of high-intensity computer chips that are processing at all times and require massive amounts of energy to operate. Just one hyperscale data center consumes the same amount of energy in 1 second as 100,000 households. Because of the massive amounts of
Jesus
energy they use,
Christ.
power and water utility companies must build multi-billion
Holy shit. That is really important that she said that. Of using these examples so that people can have a tangible way to grasp the gravity of what's happening. I'm glad she is putting it in that way, but that is really concerning.
dollar infrastructure to keep up with the demand. And these companies are not paying for their own energy infrastructure. People's energy bills around the country are skyrocketing in order to pay for these AI data centers for them. In the last 5 years, Americans who live near data centers saw their electric bills increase over 267% each month. We are talking about an $80 a monthly increase from
insane.
$80 a month to $294 a month. Working people are already living paycheck to paycheck in
Yep.
some states off of wages as low as $7.25 an hour.
The billionaire class, Epstein class, capitalist class, ruling class, political class, all of these elites that are part of this group of protecting their own interests at the downfall of humanity, because they view us as so beneath them that they don't have any need for us, even though we are the people that power the engine of their capitalist shithole economy. And that is what is so wild, is that, like, what happens when you don't have any consumers left? They're like, oh, I'll be dead by then. Except they're also trying to live forever. And then they don't even get that far because they don't view people as being something to care about.
Another federal minimum wage that Congress also refuses to raise.
The utter
They
callousness
simply cannot afford another increase to their monthly bills.
that these
And this results in
capitalists
people
show.
cutting corners whenever they can to keep the lights on, whether it's skipping meals or rationing their insulin. And while the American people are suffering, big tech continues to demand more. More data centers, more energy, more data collection, more American jobs replaced by AI, all on the feet of the American people to pay. And across the country, Democrats, Republicans, and independents are standing up. People are standing up to big tech and saying no to these data centers being built in their own communities. More than 100 local communities across 12 states have already enacted local moratoriums on data centers, and Congress itself has a moral obligation to stand with them and stop big tech from ruining their communities. Our legislation in the House and the Senate would hit the brakes on construction of new data centers until we address several of the key areas of harm AI poses. Our bills learn from our lack of regulation following the similar rise regarding the internet and demands a new approach to AI, one that protects the American people from big tech's egregious overreach, one bound by our shared commitment over those who wish to patent it, one that centers prosperity for the many over exorbitant profits for the very few. Thank you.
Okay, fire away. By the way, we're just going to take questions on AI. Yes, who are you?
Brian Mesford, Business Insider. One of the most common critiques that comes up when this idea of moratorium is raised is that we're in an AI race with China, and that slowing down the progress of AI development in any way would give China an advantage, whether that's economic, national security. I'm curious, when that critique is raised to you, what do you say to that? Is that something you're concerned about?
Well, I think the good news here, and it's not widely known, is there are a number of Chinese scientists who share the same concern that American scientists are worried about.
Yeah.
And that is, if we don't get a handle on AI, there are going to be enormous existential consequences. So I think in a sane world, what happens is the leadership of the United States sits down with the leadership in China and leadership around the world to work together so that we don't go over the edge and create a technology which could perhaps destroy humanity. But I would say there are Chinese scientists fairly high up in the government who share those concerns. We've got to immediately, with a sense of urgency, bring those people together. Anything you wanted to add to that?
I mean, I think the concern there is easily remedied by passing protections for people. We need to sort out energy sources. Once these companies can be on the up and up, providing their own energy, building out and investing in the infrastructure, refusing to free ride off of the American people, then we can continue to develop and explore this technology. I don't think that this is about a denialism of science or American competitiveness, but it is about an integration of protection of the American people instead of allowing this to happen at their expense.
And furthermore, this legislation will prohibit the export of chips to China and other countries. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Congresswoman, I think,
You are.
Chase Williams with Fox Business. You mentioned 267% electric bills up each month. The administration has taken some steps to remedy these concerns. I wonder what you make of their actions. And my second question for both of you is, do either of you guys use artificial intelligence in your everyday life?
She really has such great eyebrows.
In terms of the impact that it's having, I think we just need to ask everyday people on if they're feeling the effects of that. I think as much as, as much as as I personally have differences with this administration, I would want them to be successful in reducing the energy bills of American people, but people aren't feeling it. It's not working. In New York City alone, there are some families that are getting electric bills that are $600 a month, as high as some people were paying in rent not too long ago before our housing costs skyrocketed as well. So, I don't think those efforts are working on behalf of the administration. As far as AI, I do not regularly integrate it into my daily life.
Good.
But I know many people do. I think our job tends to be a little bit more, for me, a lot of my job is quite writing-based, and I like to do my own. Thank you.
Very old-fashioned.
I'm old-fashioned that way.
To answer the question, we have looked at
Good
AI.
plug.
We did a chat with Claude recently, but I don't use it on a regular basis. Other questions? Anyone else? Yes.
Igor with Huffington Post. Senator, do you think the Democratic Party is taking the threat of AI seriously enough? And can you talk a little bit about AI's influence in elections? They
Sure.
spend a lot of money in.
Good. Thank you. No, I don't think the Democratic Party leadership is taking this issue anywhere near as seriously as it should. We need to develop a sense of urgency here.
Call it out.
The economic impacts are going to be enormous. The impacts on our children will be enormous. And again, there is literally an existential threat to the existence of the human race. Now, you tell me, do you think that leadership here on either side of the aisle is saying, whoa, we better get moving on this thing? The answer is no. And the second point, the question you're raising that the Congresswoman mentioned, let us be clear. Why is Congress not moving aggressively? Well, maybe it has something to do with 150 million and more that is coming in to Congress in campaign contributions and in super PACs.
Hello.
When you have a class of people who are multi-billionaires spending a few $100 million on elections is chicken feed, okay? And that is what they are doing. So
Yeah.
what they're saying to members of Congress and
They don't give a
candidates,
fuck.
you're going to stand up to us? Well, guess what? There's
I think
going to
that's
be
a
a $20
major
million
reason
ad
why
campaign
Kat
coming tomorrow
Aubri
starting
Devashrayee didn't
against
win
you. That's the
her
reality.
campaign. I
Other
wish she
questions?
had.
Yes, sir.
I mean, she's still young, so she has a lot of opportunities ahead of her, I'm sure. But it would have been nice to have another person who is especially focused on
Yeah.
Palestinian liberation and a domestic progressive agenda.
Your first question, it's an important question. It's a little bit different than what we're talking about today. You're talking about the possibility of a bubble bursting and having enormous economic impact. I think that's true. But above and beyond that, what we're talking about is a technology, bubble or no bubble, that is going to have a real impact on American society. He asked me about my chat with Claude. I'll tell you, it was a little bit mind-blowing. You can very easily, and again, I suppose the young people have more familiarity with it than I do. It is amazingly easy to start seeing this entity, this AI agent, or call it what you might, as a human being. And please remember, importantly,
Yeah,
AI
exactly.
is only going to get more and more effective in years to come.
Especially at
It's only a
manipulating
relatively few years
humans
old.
because we're
And yet you sit
stupid.
down and you can absolutely
And
hey,
easily
have a nice day. How are you?
manipulated.
Pretty good. How are you doing? Okay, you can get into that, and I want you to think about what
of
it
us are
will
more
mean
stupid
to a
than others,
13-year-old
admittedly.
girl who is struggling and having AI as her best friend, or a 15-year-old boy, or whatever it may be. These are real serious dangers. But to answer your question, it is mind-blowing how
Yeah,
quickly
that's so
you can
sad that kids
somehow
have
see
AI
this as
as
a human
friends.
agent. Okay, yes.
Owned by these billionaire oligarchs, just the brainwashing continues. When people aren't on their phones with their AI best friend that is controlled by the same billionaire who owns the media platform that they are engaging with. Like, and it has taken their possibility of a job. Just insanity.
He'll be it to make it so, as you kind of alluded to, make it so that these companies are paying for their own or
Yeah.
producing their own energy. Why why not go that route? Why do the moratorium?
Because that's one part of the problem. As the Congresswoman mentioned, you're seeing people now whose electric bills are soaring beyond control. That is an issue that we've got to deal with. But there are other profound issues. So if somehow or another that was put under control and electric bills did not soar, and yet we lost tens of millions of jobs, would we be happy with that? If our kids became addicted to AI agents, would we be happy with that? And I think, once again, I want to get back to the point that some of the founders of this industry, people who know more about it than anybody else in the world, are telling us that within a few years, it is likely that AI will be smarter than human beings, that human beings may lose control over AI with possibly catastrophic impacts. How do you ignore those issues? You tell me. And you asked me a question about what are the Democrats doing? Well, we need a sense of urgency right now to address these issues. Clearly, that is not the case. All right, with that, thank you all very much.
Sense of urgency about anything, really, besides donor money. All right. Yep, we need a moratorium. They need to be destroyed. All right. Moving along. So, as we are talking about the endless greed of the billionaire class, the capitalists, Epstein class, who do in fact run the world and are trying to make it so that they don't have to pay us, rely on a human workforce, but they still need us to create their money. But again, they don't think this far. But continuing to talk about these people, the pattern of extraction that they all engage in, this modern colonization, I wanted to talk about the history of how we have gotten here. And I saw that Rohan Davis came out with this recent video, Understanding the Real History of Coffee. And I love him. He makes great content. So I wanted to give this a watch. Disclaimer. This video will reference archaic and outdated colonial terms from old manuals and documents in history. This video is for educational purposes only and not meant to offend or refer to any people group in a derogatory manner. Yeah, so it's like, oh, we're being accurate to history. This is how people were actually referred as.
There's this old manual on efficiency and best practices written by an old French coffee planter. It dealt in matters of getting the best out of your plantation, and it focused a lot on the management of workers. And I quote, "The Negro is that creature that we are forced to keep in his natural state of thraldom, to obtain from him the requisite services, because under a different condition, he would not labor." This was a quote by P.J. Laborie in his manual on how to run a coffee plantation. The Coffee Planter of Saint-Domingue, 1798. Coffee is a beloved beverage all over the world. It is an industry that I've had the privilege of being a part of for the last 9 years or so. It's fueled pretty much every single essay I've written on this channel as well. Not only that, it's helped me literally pay my rent. Caffeine products exist in the entertainment economy in various ways. You know, you've got energy drinks, coffee scrubs, coffee rubs, hair masks, and so on. It's a prominent part of fitness communities. Office workers line up in a religious-like procession to get their morning cup of coffee. It is marketed as fuel for gamers as well. The coffee that most people in the West know as a European thing, or an Aussie thing, or an Italian thing. In the most recent wave of specialty coffee is a relatively recent phenomenon. Coffee as a whole throughout history has survived being shunned by various religious groups and authoritarian monarchs. Quite famously, the church viewed coffee as a devil's brew that only Muslim heathens drank and must be avoided. That still didn't stop the Pope from baptizing it for Christian consumption. It was also banned multiple times throughout the Ottoman Empire, where you had the first cafes in the world. Throughout the Arab kingdoms, various Sufi mystics and rival political factions to the sultanates frequently threatened the power established by the imamates and sultanates. What essentially evolved from a plant's natural pesticide and defense mechanism, has become our favorite psychoactive drug ever since the Oromo people of South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea began to consume it in their energy ball recipes. Real life Naruto stamina pills right there. Coffee culture has moved from Africa all the way to where the modern day hipsters around the world geek out about co-ferments or whatever the next premiumization in the industry is. By the way, please hit that subscribe button. We are trying to get to 50k on this channel. Like, comment, hype, and please share this video with
Subscribe
any
to
coffee
Rohan.
lovers or
He's
baristas you
awesome.
might know. For centuries, this decoction has fueled creativity, yet in most
Makes
books on coffee that you
incredible
might find, for the
content.
longest time, a lot of human history is often left out and maybe given a passing mention. When I was new to the industry, I went through multiple coffee courses as well, and I didn't hear much about the detailed roots and histories of coffee and how it traveled, how it mutated, how it developed. Besides the usual myth of Kaldi, the goat herder, as a nod to the history of the crop being from Ethiopia. Sometimes you come across a little line about mocha in Yemen and a hand wave about the Bialetti mocha pot, and ignore that time Italy invaded Ethiopia, and how subsidization of aluminium under Mussolini's regime had a big part to play in the development of the mocha pot production. And then it's on to
fascist
the
history
espresso
of
machine
coffee.
in Italy. After that, we tend to skip to the more nerdy, sciencey characteristics of coffee, like what happens to a bean during the wash process, or what happens during a dry or natural process. Honey process, what's that? And how these factors influence the final cup in your coffee in the consuming nations. And don't get me wrong, I love all of that. It's been my bread and butter for all these years in the industry. There's a lot of lovely and unique things that happen to coffee during these processes, but that knowledge is more common and talked about in the coffee world. Most coffee courses you sign up will probably cover that. What is rather uncommon though is the discussion of how the coffee trade has
didn't know that
been
he
rather
was in the
consequential
coffee
to
industry.
billions
This
of
is
human beings
interesting to
throughout
get his,
time,
like,
and
personal
not
perspective.
always in good ways. There's a lot of history and there's a lot of recipes that many who get into specialty coffee don't know about and may even be avoiding learning. There is admittedly a blind spot that comes about due to this very political, apolitical stance that a lot of people are programmed into taking up because of the miseducation of so many people around these topics. There is that knee-jerk reaction of talking about colonialism is just annoying, when the reality is it is a current phenomenon. I'm talking about the self-declared apolitical, it's not that deep crowd. Throughout my years of training baristas as well, I've unfortunately seen many young
Accurately
people
put.
disrespect the crop and the history of the people who grow the crop. There have even been instances of cafe owners in the West who've used the profits from coffee to raise funds for hateful and bigoted movements that target people who look just like the ones who grow the crop in the first place. There is a certain discomfort in acknowledging the very real blood, sweat, and tears that go into making a cup of coffee. My philosophy is the more you know about the history, the more respect you will have for the crop as a barista, or cafe owner, or anyone along the chain as a consumer as well. And I believe we will all be better for it. You can't really
Excited
know
for
the
this.
reality that a lot of coffee farmers in South America cannot even access the crop that they grow at a coffee shop. And when we talk about the consuming nations, especially in the so-called first world, there is the issue of black and brown people also being pushed into invisible parts of the coffee chain, away from customer-facing positions. When this happens in communities, it tends to reinforce implicit biases among the cafe-going customer base. It was not long ago in the US, for instance, that general society just accepted that black folks who worked at cafes belonged in the kitchens, and the front-facing positions like cashier and barista roles would go to white faces, even though virtually all coffee around the world is grown and harvested by black and brown people. They are often relegated to the world of the unseen, the underpaid, or the underappreciated, but poster and marketing worthy. While those in the consuming nations of the first world are often represented in competitions, leading coffee podcasts, and so on, being the tastemakers of the coffee world, setting the rules of how it should be consumed. Farmers in the producing nations have to try and keep up with the ever-fleeting trend life cycles that happen on the online economy these days. This ignorance also contributes to why it's a trend to go on racist tirades about seeing too many Indian workers at Tim Hortons, for example. You do not see online TikTok trends questioning the exploitative business practices of the American Brazilian hedge fund that actually owns Tim Hortons, and also possibly sources Brazilian coffee from plantations that might actually engage in modern day slavery. There are no TikTok trends questioning why this foreign corporation like Tim Hortons is allowed to abuse the temporary foreign worker status, which has already received quite a bit of criticism for being essentially a system of modern day indentured labor that only benefits big corporations. Tim Hortons franchisees have also been reported to evict tenants from properties so they can house exploited workers on very precarious immigration statuses with barely any rights or access to social safety nets that other Canadians can access. So in this equation, you have brown people and brown faces being abused at the source, far away from customer or consumer eyes. And you have brown people also being abused in the producing countries' systems as well. This kind of discrimination is a global phenomenon and a feature of capitalism and not a bug. Not questioning any aspects of responsibility of the owner classes in every system, but abusing workers is the established norm in capitalism globally. Monarchies in the Middle East, I'm talking about UAE and Saudi, have the very exploitatory kafala system.
That the law isn't always on your side as a foreigner in Dubai. Now, the first story has since gone viral on the internet. An Asian man was arrested for filming this video that shows an Emirati citizen beating up an Indian delivery van driver. The man filming was arrested after a complaint from the Emirati man's family that he had been defamed as a result of the video.
انا والله العظيم اتكلم بالحق بما يملي عليه ضميري. هل تتوقع احنا في الكويت ولا احنا في السعوديه ولا احنا في الامارات راح نساوي عامل بنغالي بعامل مصري؟ اعوذ بالله، هل راح نساوي عامل هندي باخ من السودان ولا بمصر ولا من اي دوله عربيه؟ ان كان مهندس، ان كان دكتور، ان كان ميكانيكي، ان كان شو ما كان، اطلاقا ولا 1%.
Which also exists in countries like Lebanon. These systems essentially strip workers of any rights, and their very existence in the country is tied to their employer. It is bonded labor. I've worked in hospitality in the UAE as well, and I have experienced firsthand how the system can be manipulated by local entities. In my very first week of working in coffee in the UAE, I distinctly remember a defining moment. I was working for a very popular local coffee roaster, and I was on shift with my barista and roaster colleagues who were from Kenya, Uganda, Nepal, and India. That day, an Aussie man walked into the shop. He looked around and took a couple of photos. Didn't say hi or anything to us at first, so I went over to him and, did all enthusiastic and did the usual, like, how can I help you? So on and so forth. And his first response is, where are the Europeans? My teammates and I glanced at each other and we looked back at this dude to see if he was serious. And he was just smiling from ear to ear with a camera pointed at us. And then he began to talk about how he was a big name Yelper in Australia or something, and proceeded to lecture us about how only Europeans, Aussies, Kiwis can make good coffee, and that we had too many Indians and Africans behind the bar. It didn't matter to him that at the time we had won the world championship for Turkish coffee, and it did not matter to the guy at the time that our coffee roaster was literally also a coffee grower. Now, all that mattered to this man was our melanin, because he had constructed racist biases in his head from Australia, and now he was thrown because he was confronted with a peek behind the veil of his own ignorance. As many of you who watch the channel might know, I'm from Kerala in South India, and what many may not know is that we are also a coffee growing region. I have friends who are coffee growers and roasters, some who run full bean to cup ecosystems within India itself. These aren't just business friends or anything like that cultivated through, origin trips and whatnot. They are my actual friends. In these regions, we have our own recipes and coffee making traditions that we've cultivated over hundreds of years. So to have this random Aussie dude walk into our space and where we'd been building our craft, and to endure his confident proclamation that we were actually not worthy to work what is essentially a glorified water pump with a motor that some Italian brands will want you to spend multiple cars worth of money on. Let's just say that it left an indelible mark on me and my colleagues. Those experiences sent a flurry of questions in my head, like who gets to decide what is good coffee, and is the average person educated about the basic history of the crop itself and its direct and enduring legacy of slavery and indentured labor? Why did this man not know that 3 out of the 4 members of our team that day came from coffee growing regions? Why was the ability and competence of my team so quickly and specifically discarded from this man's head? And even if he did know some of these facts, would it have mattered? Would he have said and done all that with his chest if he had that information? This became a continuous and often unsolicited theme throughout my career. By pretending that coffee history doesn't exist because facing the real history of the industry makes certain people uncomfortable, we actually perpetuate these modern barriers that definitely need to be undone in coffee. So today we will shine a light on the many unspoken things within coffee that I think we should know. So let's begin. The origin of coffee is African. African tribes in Ethiopia, South Sudan, Eritrea, Rwanda, Congo, and North Kenya were the first people in human history to consume coffee in various ways. The earliest method of consumption is said to be an energy ball, essentially, attributed to the Oromo people. Coffee cherries were ground into a rough paste using what is essentially the oldest coffee grinder in existence, the Moi and Muktuma. Yes, it is like a mortar and pestle. The coffee would then be boiled in a koribun nakala with either ghee, which is clarified butter, or some sort of animal fat. Eventually, people in the region also began to ferment coffee into a type of wine as well. In the 1st century, the African kingdom of Aksum, which would encompass modern-day East Sudan, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, and southern Yemen, would go on to become a major trading power in the Red Sea, perfectly situated between the trade route of Rome and India. The ports in this region, like the ancient port of Musa, now Arabized to Al-Mokha, were frequented by traders who were from Rome and Greece, so they could access pepper, cardamom, and saffron and other spices from South Asia, and ivory, tortoiseshell, rhinoceros horns, and gold from across Africa. Some historians suggest that it is possible that after the Aksumites invaded early Yemen, that's when coffee began to be planted in the Yemeni region, as coffee in a way was already part of ancient Ethiopian cultures and cuisines. Although not as common in elite mainstream society, it was more consumed among the peripheral Ethiopian tribes. If you're a weirdo nerd like me, you've come across this document, Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and you'd know that this region was popping off at that time. So despite all this trade and movement, coffee still wasn't that popular to trade, and it's still arguably an acquired taste for many. It was not a popular commodity to be traded at the time, so it remained a feature of local customs and rituals. There was definitely a difference of class and caste in the cultures of ancient Ethiopia. Early Ethiopian Orthodox Christians among the nobility actually banned coffee. Not only that, it wasn't the ruling class ethnic groups like the Amhara and the Tigrayan of Ethiopia who grew the coffee. It was the ethnic groups of the Oromo, the Kafecho, the Sidama, Majangir, and the Nilotic people who tended to grow coffee at the time. They were often not considered to be a part of the mainstream Ethiopian societies due to their religious identities, which was mostly animistic. So they were targets of frequent slave raids by the Christian Orthodox Ethiopian monarchy and the later Islamic caliphates that also plundered the regions for slaves. The consumption of liquid coffee would not be considered the norm among the upper echelons of Ethiopian society until Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II would change this. The dynamics of this cultural change would evolve over time, but feel free to do your own research on that if you're interested in that part of history. Seek out this document, the Fetha Nagast, if you'd like to see what early Orthodox Christians thought about who could be enslaved and what kind of tribes and animistic religions were fair game, essentially. The Ethiopian jibena was the first vessel designed specifically to brew coffee in what we now call a full immersion method, which just means the roasted ground coffee sits within the brewing water for the entire duration of the brew. The next very notable people group who incorporated coffee into their rituals far before it was mainstream were the Yemeni Islamic Sufis. If you aren't familiar with the term Sufi, they are Islamic mystics. They are not a separate branch of Islam, as Sufis could either be Sunni or Shia, and throughout history there have been male, female, and even trans Sufis. For instance, the Ajmer Sharif Sufi shrine, established in 1236 CE in India, has had trans Sufis participate. That has been going on to this day. Sufi rituals have historically incorporated dance, music, and art. A notable Sufi you may have heard of is Rumi, the Sufi poet. Now, what does any of this have to do with coffee? Well, an important part of Islam is this concept of dhikr, the remembrance of God. The Sufis found that coffee, this niche for its time African fruit, could aid in their dhikr practices. It would allow them to stay up throughout the night chanting the name of God, and they also found that it aided in meditation. It is among the Sufis that coffee became an integral part of discussions and debates within the Islamic world on spirituality and on leadership. Wine and alcohol were common in the Islamic world, and because the Sufis wanted to refrain from those substances, they replaced the intoxicants with coffee. In fact, the Arabic word for coffee, kawa, literally actually means wine. Early Europeans who had heard of the existence of coffee around the 17th century even called coffee Arabic wine or Arabian wine. The Sufis would produce a lightly roasted coffee with ground cardamom and other spices that they had access to thanks to the aforementioned trade routes. Over time, coffee became a rather popular drink in the Islamic world, both in the Arabian Peninsula and the Ottoman Empire. It was actually illegal to take coffee plants out of Yemen. It was an Indian Sufi named Baba Budan who smuggled it out of Yemen and brought it to South India. That's why this coffee growing hill here is called Baba Budangiri. In these regions, you will find local recipes like chukkagapi. In northern Kerala, especially in Idiki, we tend to infuse our coffee with cardamom, black pepper, and a local leaf called panikurka, which is native to India, Africa, and Arabia. Its flavor profile is something between mint and oregano. This aromatic brew, like all well-balanced mocktails, is then sweetened with jaggery. And coffee didn't just stay in Chikmagalur in the south, where the Sufis had planted it. Coffee culture was also adopted by the Mughal rulers in North India, who wanted to emulate the practices of the Turks and Persians, whose art, poetry, and culture they held in high regard. During the 1600s, throughout North India, kawakhanas opened up, which were essentially the Mughal style of cafe. It was in 1475, though, when the world got its first public cafe, and it was set up in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, by two Armenian brothers, Garabed and Sarkis Hamparsumian. Coffee was made using a hand-hammered ibrik, typically made out of copper for the metal's good thermal conductivity. Side note, the original Neapolitan flip was also made out of copper in France in 1819, and it was based on these early brewers from the Middle East and Africa. The ibrik was traditionally heated in hot sand, and it is even now in many cafes. An alternative these days is a gas Bunsen burner that heats the center of the chesva, which gives the brew a type of bottom-up rotation. This turbulence adds to the extraction process, getting more coffee goodness into your final cup. With these new techniques and innovations, coffee shops became much more popular meeting places across the region, with thousands opening across the Ottoman Empire. The culture shifted from being an at-home or Sufi meeting place drinking ritual to the culture of meeting people in public places to have discussions, enjoy live music, some shisha, and partake in this beverage. During Ramadan, when people fasted throughout the day, the cafes stayed open until late at night, so people could break their fast and continue to drink coffee throughout the night. And this is something that you'll find across the Middle East, even today. These cafes became places where different classes of people could intermingle. A bunch of working class people getting together, sharing their problems under a sultan, singing, dancing, competing for attendance with mosques. Naturally, this made some very powerful, privileged people very insecure. To further add to the anxiety of the Sultanate, the Janissary Corps, the elite infantry, the first standing army to be equipped with firearms in the world, began to frequent these coffee houses. Many Janissaries also began to own and operate their own cafes, which were quite popular among the military. Now, this is very important because you see the Janissaries also formed the Sultan's personal guard, and they were made up of soldier slaves, originally from across the Balkans. They had Greeks, Albanians, and Slavs, many of whom were also Christian, and they formed their own unique culture through their regimented training. This form of slavery, although brutal and immoral because it is slavery, is not to be confused with European chattel slavery, as the Janissaries were allowed mobility and were even allowed to form rival political factions. They've historically actually overthrown several sultans and have attained considerable wealth and their own business empires regardless of their slave status. A Janissary could also become free by completing their contracts and or by getting a promotion into another government position. And sometimes even the entire Janissary Corps would be abolished to prevent further revolt or rebellions. So in the Ottoman Empire, you had this weird situation where you had a very powerful armed social caste, the Janissaries, plus the masses of workers and also radical Sufi mystics who espoused mystical interpretations of Islam that were considered heretical by the conservatives in their society at the time. And these people were getting together in cafes and plotting. This would lead to the periodic banning and unbanning of coffee shops and the consumption of coffee under various sultans, like under the reign of Sultan Murad IV. This didn't stop people from consuming coffee though, as coffee clearly won. Not to be outdone by the Ottomans in using religion to suppress the masses, European Christians also followed suit. When coffee finally reached England much later in 1675, King Charles II tried to ban coffee shops for the exact same reason. He was insecure about sedition and rebellion because coffee and coffee shops had a way of bringing people together from various classes on common ground. Christians in Italy called coffee the Satan's brew and saw it as something only Muslim, heathens, and infidels drank. They sounded very similar to the conservative elites of the sultanates. And as I mentioned before, the Christians in Italy petitioned the Pope to ban coffee throughout the empire. The Pope was presented a cup, he drank it, and he was like, nah. More specifically, he said, why this Satan's drink is so delicious that it would be a pity to let the infidels have exclusive use of it. We shall fool Satan by baptizing it and making it a truly Christian beverage. The Nordic kingdoms were not too different. Sweden has banned coffee on 5 different occasions, and they are some of the world's heaviest drinkers of coffee today. King Gustav III was convinced that coffee was actually poison and even conducted multiple experiments on death row inmates to find
Ew, this fucker. You should not trust. This is not the look of someone that you can trust. Let's just put it that way.
out how much coffee could kill a person. It's also worth remembering the gendered nature of coffee shops back then. From France to England to Sweden to Constantinople, the Ottoman Empire and the Arab world, only men could visit cafes in all this history. In France, it would take until the 1920s for women to finally be allowed to dine in a cafe. The moral of the story here, from Ethiopia to the Ottoman Empire to Paris, is kings really suck. We don't want kings, especially when they weaponize religion.
Yeah.
We're all human, and clearly history shows that we
True.
always have similar problems and we tend to react the same ways. So we should probably stick together. With that said, let's discuss how coffee went to Western Europe. I'm not going to cover all the centuries though. Let's spend some time talking about France specifically. In the 1600s, coffee was virtually unknown in Paris. It was only read about in travelogues. And then in 1669, a Turkish ambassador, Solomon Aga, visited Paris with his retinue. They brought with them coffee and the equipment to make it. They would flaunt this exotic substance that had become a core part of the Ottoman culture. It created a bit of a buzz in Parisian society, and not all positive. In 1672, Madame de Sévigné, a celebrated French letter writer, said that coffee would just be a phase and that people would eventually become disgusted with it as with any unworthy favorite. Also in 1672, it is said that an
turn out
Armenian named
for ya?
Pascal was the first to sell coffee publicly in the streets of Paris. Pascal set up a tent in the fair of Saint-Germain, and his barista team consisted of Turkish waiter boys who peddled coffee among the crowds in small cups on trays. The locals began to call the drink Petit Noir. Apparently the name Petit Noir can still be found on menus in Paris today, so if you're from Paris, please comment if you know this to be true. When the fair ended, Pascal then opened a cafe on the Quai de l'École. His clientele in the area though were looking more for wine and beers, which they were used to expecting at a brick and mortar establishment. So Pascal had to try different tactics to try and get customers. So he would send out his waiters out to nearby streets with their coffee pots, and they would cry cafe, cafe. It really wouldn't pick up in Paris though. So eventually Pascal moved out to London, where he heard coffee had become more popular. After that, and yet another Armenian person tried opening a cafe in Paris. This time he sold tobacco to see if that would be a unique thing that would draw customers. There were more who tried, merchants from Syria and so on. However, many Parisians did not take to it apparently, as it was the poor and often foreigners who were more familiar with coffee as a product. Historian William H. Euchers said that gentlemen and people of fashion did not care to be seen in this type of public house. It was when Frenchmen began to set up their own versions of the Ottoman cafe in the vision of what would be culturally accepted to Parisian society. Spacious apartments in an elegant manner, ornamented with tapestries, large mirrors, pictures, marble tables, branches for candles, magnificent lustres, and serving coffee, tea, chocolate, and other refreshments. Then they were soon crowded with people of fashion and men of letters. Then, sometime in the 1690s, Francois Procope, an already established lemonade maker, because apparently lemonade was like all the rage at the time, well, he opened Café Procope in Paris, and his cafe was directly opposite the theater Comédie Française. And because he was already established, he had a license to sell spices, ices, and barley water and other such refreshments that was acceptable to high society in Paris. He wanted to specifically target the upper class clientele. Procope became a favored haunt of many notable French artists and dramatists. Voltaire was a regular, and his usual drink was what early Europeans seemed to perceive as the default coffee at the time, a mocha, which is essentially coffee with chocolate. Coffee was known as mocha due to its link with the port of Mocha, but also many Europeans did not like the taste of the smoky, dark roasted black coffee by itself. It was commonly sweetened with chocolate and sugar back then, and that's how the name mocha stuck. And yes, I will be getting into some of the details of the chocolate and sugar plantations as well later in this video. Much like the Ottoman Empire, the cafe was also the meeting place for French revolutionaries. The popularity of cafes in the Western world skyrocketed, with hundreds upon hundreds of cafes popping up in Western cities like Paris, Boston, London. How are they going to feed this new trend of selling coffees? Would they keep buying from only Yemeni traders? For the longest time, only Yemen, Ethiopia, and South India grew a decent amount of the world's coffee that was used across the Arab world, the Ottoman Empire, Persia, the Mughal Empire in India. Remember how I said there were a lot of rules around taking live trees out of places like Yemen? Well, this was also the age of Western European colonialism, racial capitalism, and the earliest megacorporations in the world. The Dutch East India Company, the British East India Company, the French, and so on, weren't going to wait around when there was clearly money to be made. These European mercantile entities would wage war with each other for centuries in South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa, and then the Caribbean, for who got the right to steal resources and human labor from various indigenous peoples. The Dutch were the first in Europe to try and grow the plant in Europe. The smuggler Peter van den Broek managed to steal some live plants out of Yemen in 1616. They tried to grow it in the Netherlands but found that the climate was way too unfavorable. And then in 1663, the Dutch captured a heavily fortified Portuguese stronghold in Fort Kochi in South India, Kerala. The Dutch's main aim here was to monopolize the pepper and cinnamon trade. But once they finished their conquest, they found that coffee had already been growing well in parts of northern Kerala. And it was specifically the Typica varietal that grew in the region, which was a descendant of the original strain of coffee from Yemen. Adrian van Ormen, the Dutch colonizer who was appointed as governor of Fort Kochi, decided to send the Typica seeds to his governor friend in Batavia, which is modern-day Jakarta in Indonesia. The Dutch used indigenous labor in Jakarta to work on their plantations in the region. Then over decades, these Arabica plantations would spread to Timor, to Bali, Suweli, and Sumatra. And this was how you got coffee in the region. The Dutch, after the Portuguese, had the monopoly over the transatlantic slave trade until 1734. And during this time, the Dutch would kill thousands upon thousands of Indonesians as punishment for trading with other European powers to try and maintain their monopoly over coffee during that time. Coffee Canafora or Robusta did not arrive in Southeast Asia until the 1900s. Coffee Canafora was grown predominantly in the Congo by small-scale Congolese family farms. French and Belgian colonizers observed this around the 1880s in the region between Gabon and the mouth of the Congo River. A couple of botanists from France and Belgium collected samples of the early Robusta plant on one of their expeditions to procure species with economic potential. So Belgian Congo became the laboratory from where multiple strains of Robusta was produced. It was from the Congo that the Robusta coffee plant was sent to Dutch-controlled Java and other regions like the Ivory Coast, Uganda, Madagascar, Ghana, South India, Guinea as well. Farmers in these regions were noticing that the Robusta plant was particularly resistant to leaf rust, since many Arabica plantations were having trouble with diseases causing massive loss of crops. This was now a safer, more profitable alternative. Natural hybrids would occur in Southeast Asia, especially in Timor, and this led to the development of other man-made hybrids like the Catimor. Anyway, Typica is a very important coffee varietal, as a lot of coffee consumed today is kind of a mutation of this main varietal. The Maragogipe varietal, for instance, is a natural mutation of Typica. A couple of big name coffees like Kona Coffee or Jamaican Blue Mountain, they are also of the typical varietal. However, the problem for plantations was that this varietal naturally did not yield high amounts of coffee cherries. So in terms of profit, it wasn't the best to maximize. It was also really susceptible to leaf rust, which was a disease that could wipe out entire crops of countries. And that did happen in Ceylon, or Sri Lanka as we call it today, where the Dutch surrendered the islands to the British colonizers, who were thirsting at the prospect of capitalizing on one of the largest coffee producing countries in the world at the time. Leaf rust ripped through the monocrop Typica and effectively made coffee extinct in Sri Lanka until very recently. Typica has a huge part to play in the history of another popular varietal, Bourbon. Bourbon, to modern day coffee snobs and budding baristas, is a highly sought out varietal, prized for its potential of sweet and complex cup quality, but also its high yield to farmers who grew them. Like the Dutch, the French had initially tried to grow coffee in Dijon but failed. It was the mayor of Amsterdam who gifted a Typica plant to King Louis XIV in 1714. The French king planted it in the botanical garden in Paris. That tree would seed some of the first coffee grown in the Western Hemisphere in Haiti. The French East India Company also managed to procure 60 Typica plants from Yemen, apparently in exchange for some medical work done for the Imam of Yemen at the time. Those 60 plants would be brought to an island in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Madagascar that the French had named Bourbon, after the noble house of Bourbon. Of the 60 plants procured, around 20 managed to survive the journey, and of the 20 odd trees that survived, apparently only one managed to produce offspring. And by 1720, the island had over 7,000 new trees thanks to the rich volcanic organic soil. Over time, the typica tree would mutate into a shorter shrub-like plant that yielded lots of fruit, and this is how Bourbon became a separate varietal. The Bourbon noble house did not get on the fields and grow this coffee. So let's talk about who did. You see, the French operated under the Code Noir, the Black Code, when it came to slavery. You know that King Louis XIV fellow I mentioned earlier, the one the Dutch presented with a typical coffee tree from Java? Well, apparently these codes were his idea. Christianity had transformed from being the religion of the downtrodden to the religion of imperialism. You'll notice that some of these codes are rooted in weaponizing religion, as well, in order to enshrine anti-Semitism into law, as well as anti-blackness. So let's briefly skim through a few of them. For instance, Edict number 1 of Code Noir has a passage that says, and I quote, "We enjoin all of our officers to chase from our lands all the Jews who had established residence there." Article 2 and others demand that all slaves must be baptized into the Catholic faith or face penalties and fines. Article 9 said, "Free men who shall have one or more children during concubinage with their slaves, together with their master who accepted it, shall each be fined 2,000 pounds of sugar. If they are the masters of the slave who produced that children, we desire, in addition to the fine, that the slave and the children be removed, and that she and they be sent to work at the hospital, never to gain their freedom." And here's Article 12. "Children born from marriages between slaves shall be slaves, and if the husband and wife have different masters, they shall belong to the masters of the female slave, not to the master of her husband." And then you have this article that says, "The fugitive slave who has been on the run for 1 month from the day his master reported him to the police shall have his ears cut off and shall be branded with a fleur-de-lis on one shoulder. If he commits the same infraction for another month, again counting from the day he is reported, he shall have his hamstring cut and be branded with a fleur-de-lis on the other shoulder. The third time, he shall be put to death." These articles were written in Versailles on 1685. The French East India Company would kidnap slaves from India, Africa, and Madagascar, and these slaves would make up the slave labor that would cultivate and grow Bourbon on the island. This was the coffee that would fuel the rise of the Parisian cafes in French high society. The slavery on this island was so brutal and inhumane that even French travelers would write about it, and some would ask if this was even worth it. In 1769, Jacques-Henri Bernardin de Saint-Pierre penned one of France's first prominent critiques of slavery in Voyage à l'Île de France, a book about his journeys to Mauritius and Reunion Island. I do not know whether coffee and sugar are necessary to the happiness of Europe, but I do know that these two crops are responsible for the misery of two parts of the world. While the forced labor of brown and black people on the islands of Bourbon and many others fueled the cafe culture that played a cultural role in the French Revolution that proclaimed freedom and equality for everyone. That freedom was not meant for the brown and black labor on the island and the various colonial outposts and plantation islands around the world. Coffee is key to understanding the Atlantic world in the second half of the 18th century. The demand for coffee and sugar led to a boom in slave-based production in the West Indies. The expansion of sugar plantations was partly dependent on the coffee boom as well. The French would then take Martinique and Haiti, then known as the French colony of Saint-Domingue, and Saint-Domingue would go on to produce roughly 40% of the sugar and 60% of the coffee that would be shipped to Europe. To supply these plantations with labor, the French slavers would import more than 800,000 Africans to the colony. The Dutch and the French at the time were vying for global domination of the coffee market at a great human cost, and they knew it. They wrote extensively about it and how to run the most efficient plantation systems, boasting about using humane methods and sharing strategies on how to prevent slave revolts in elaborate plantation.
That's like saying humane slavery is insane. Like, absolutely. What? Oxymoron, anyone? Jesus.
Management manuals. One such manual, from which I pulled the excerpt from earlier in this video, was The Coffee Planter of Saint-Domingue by P.J. Aubri, published in 1798. I will read a few passages from this manual to give you a sense of what a seemingly moderate European coffee planter was like at the time. And I quote, "The Negro is not, perhaps, the worst species of the human race. He is an animal rational in a middle degree, tolerably good because he is docile and timid, and because he never thinks of a better condition than what he actually enjoys, unless the thought as well as the means of attaining is forced upon his observation. He is little capable of actual gratitude and solid attachment, but he is endowed with a general vague notion of right and wrong. He has all the defects of people of the lowest class. He perverts everything to gratify his sloth, lust, and gluttony, and under these predicaments he will be found an impudent liar. Such nearly and in general view is that creature whom we are forced to keep in his natural state of thraldom, in order to obtain from him the requisite service, because it is now proved by experience more decisively than by speculative reasonings that
just egregious dehumanization to justify the institution that is unjustifiable. Slavery, chattel slavery. It's disgusting.
Under a different condition, he would not labor. We must exact from the Negro all work he can reasonably perform, and use every means to prolong his life. If interest directs the first, humanity enjoins the second, and here they both go hand in hand. Happy accord, the consciousness of which forms the whole philosophical and political system of the planter. In order to make the best of the powers of the Negro and to keep him in subjugation, chastisement is unfortunately sometimes necessary. Such also is the case with soldiers, with sailors, and with all servile classes of men. But that his life may be prolonged as long as possible, the planter must not forget that chastisement ought to be neither too severe at a time nor too often repeated, that the Negro stands in need of quiet, of relaxation, of comforts during health, and of tender and attentive assistance in times of sickness. The planter has been sensible that humanity, as well as interest, calculated on the surest grounds, directs all those things. He has not been deaf to these suggestions. Nay, who knows but gratitude must be occasionally felt. In the next section, the planter discusses his preferred type of African slave. And these conversations honestly remind me of some actual real life conversations that have been forced upon me by some business owners who try to hire based on race or nationality, which a lot of people absolutely do even today. Here's the passage. "I should prefer, in my respects, to form a gang of young Guinea Negroes of the best choice, and even when there is a sufficient number of men full grown for the labor, I would advise to purchase only boys and girls of 14 and 15. Guinea Negroes require in the beginning to be gently worked and well attended. Some may be lost in the seasoning to climate, but to counterbalance this, they are formed and disciplined according to the master's own ideas, and it is the surest means make a good and beautiful gang. The Congo, Arada, the Yamba are the best nations. Women in general do not admit of so much nicety of choice in this respect, because all over the coast of Guinea, women are accustomed to work for the men. A gang ought to be, as much as possible, composed of the same nation. I prefer the Congos. They are docile and work pretty well, provided they are well fed. Considering what's happening in the Congo right now, keep in mind that this manual was published 227 years ago. As soon as Guinea Negroes are purchased, the first care is to have them well bathed with warm water in order to take off the palm oil with which they are rubbed on shipboard. This is necessary as it intercepts perspiration. They must next be clothed as the climate requires. It is likewise extremely necessary to cause them to drink for the space of a fortnight, a sudorific potion to forward the eruption of cutaneous distempers, which the ship surgeons have often
What?
barbarously repressed, and which produce fatal consequences. If direct suspicion of this is entertained, it is better to reproduce the itch and then to cure it methodically. They ought to be christened also as soon as possible. Some planters stand godfathers for all their Negroes, to keep them free from the superstitious and abusive power of godfathers and mothers of their own color. Both religion and good manners enjoin that the Negroes be united in lawful wedlock, but wedlock ill agrees with the natural levity and fickleness of this class of people. It is particularly remarkable that while almost all the Dutch and British colonies have suffered one time or another the shock of local insurrections of Negroes, the French colonies have never felt anything of that kind. I can see no better reason for this but the difference of their respective constitutions. Ours left the strength and power of the multitudes a hidden mystery. This whole sway was, visibly at least, in the hands of a single man, both here and in the mother country. And he finishes with, I cannot omit the unpleasing but necessary practice of stamping them. It is justice then that the Haitian people, only a few years after, this manual was written,
exactly.
would violently rid themselves of the slavers and oppressors who dared to put a boot on theirs and their children's necks in the Haitian Revolution. The voodoo ceremony of 1791 that roused the enslaved Africans. If the French Revolution would not give them freedom like it did the white French, then they decided that they would wrest it from their cold dead hands. Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, those who liberated the Africans of the plantations from the Spanish and the French. They essentially spat in the face of Napoleon
Alexander
the Coward,
Dumas'
who deported Louverture
dad.
to France, where he was killed. Also, Napoleon could reinstate slavery across the French colonies. More than 60% of the world's coffee supply to Europe was out of French control. Now, if this were a movie, then that would have been that. Slavery would have ended, but no, this is real life, and the bad guys around the world. The US, Britain, France, Netherlands, Portugal, and the colonial powers of the time could not have the first independent black nation setting an example for other enslaved people around the world. So they refused to recognize Haiti as a nation. France even billed Haiti 150 million francs for property losses to the slave owners. They forced the slaves to pay reparations to their former slave masters. The European nations got together to punish Haiti for the moral act of liberating themselves from slavery. Thomas Jefferson even set embargoes on Haiti and ordered any unruly slaves in the US to be sent to the plantation. The US would even invade and occupy Haiti in 1915. The United States had significant interest there, including
Jefferson
owning
said that.
40% of the stock
he did.
of the Haitian National Bank.
United States Marines land in Haiti to battle Haitian bandits threatening destruction of American properties. Hill people of interior are questioned as to whereabouts of bandits or their hiding places. This fellow looks guilty of banditry himself.
From July 1915 to August of 1934, the United States Marines occupied the island, employing forced labor of Haitians akin to slavery to build bridges and roads. In 1934, the US pulled out their troops. These colonial powers are directly the cause for modern day Haiti to be in the state that it is in right now. The coffee, sugar, and indigo shortage that Europe experienced was replaced by colonial powers by using South and Central America to grow more of these crops. And this is where in the coffee world we start getting more mutations of Typica and Bourbon. Spain and Portugal would go on to introduce the European casta systems to organize labor in South and Central America by order of racial hierarchy. In colonial Mexico, for example, the casta system was a rigid socio-racial stratification imposed by Spanish colonial rule, designed to maintain a hierarchy specifically based on ancestry. This system intricately categorized individuals based on their lineage and closeness to European whiteness, profoundly influencing their social status, rights, opportunities, and even who gets to be kidnapped by ICE in the modern age. At the top of the hierarchy, you had the category of peninsulares. These were individuals who were born in Spain, of European ancestry. This group would hold the highest status and benefit the most under colonial rule. There's many in between, but at the bottom were the mulattoes, zambos, castizos, moriscos, and tresalvos. There were also additional categories like the lobos, the chinos, the coyotes. In these kinds of rigid hierarchical systems across the planet, you tend to see a phenomenon of mimicking by those at the bottom of the structure or the middle of the structure to present as closer to the ideal at the top. In this case, that is whiteness and Europeanness. So you had this phenomenon called blood mending. I urge you to look up what blood mending is. I came across this article by an American called Phyllis Johnson, the founder and president of BD Imports. Phyllis was born into working in cotton and growing up in rural Arkansas. Phyllis writes about experiences working for a well-known fast food chain and how the workplace was segregated like it was an unspoken rule, with black faces at the back of the kitchen and white faces on cash. Phyllis noticed...
Okay, so I'm gonna need to pause it here. We didn't get to nearly as much as what I thought we would. This is standard for me. I'll finish this video tomorrow, but I wanted to have enough time to read because we're finishing Wuthering Heights. This is what I have been making. I don't know if you can tell. Some monochrome green. Okay. I know that was kind of abrupt, but I looked at the time and it is getting later, so let us read. Nellie is still telling Mr. Lockwood about the death of Heathcliff. So she is back to narrating. And we find, excuse me, we find that after Kathy, the younger Catherine, and Hareton are getting along, it irritates Heathcliff, but he is starting to be weaker and more secluded, rarely coming out of his room and showing himself. He has a very moving monologue in this last chapter that we read that I felt like I didn't give enough attention, perhaps. And the language that he uses is just so descriptive and shows that he doesn't feel much satisfaction from the revenge that he has gotten on these people that represent these systems and experiences that he went through growing up that were very traumatizing. And the way he describes missing Catherine and still loving her, of like how living is a form of torture, that he can't abide living without her, and that everything that has happened is a byproduct essentially of them not being able to be together because of his marginalization, because of his race and background, how he is perceived in this very racist colonizer society, and how he has effectively gotten revenge, but he hasn't really received much satisfaction from it. That, like, the real thing he has always been looking for is to be able to love Catherine and Catherine Earnshaw, and that he isn't able to be with her in the end. So just like the epitome of unrequited love, which is very tragic. Clock it. The number one girl, welcome. Good to see you. We're reading Wuthering Heights, and this is the very last chapter, so spoilers. Okay, so this is Nelly narrating. Doesn't Charlie XCX have a song called that? She has a whole album called Wuthering Heights. The album is good. I have to say, she did it for this latest film adaptation of the movie. The album is better than the movie, in my opinion. I wanted to read this because the movie was coming out. I have many issues with the movie because I think it needs to have a more of a decolonizing lens. They should have cast a person of color as Heathcliff because he's spoken about in very racialized language. And that could have been a very interesting conversation to be had about race and social constructs and class. And that is something that I think many film adaptations just get completely wrong. It's like this bodice ripping story of like sadomasochism and like conflicted love that is not a pure like salvation type of story, but instead we see with Emily Bronte being very class conscious that she confronts these systems of oppression and very clearly has Heathcliff develop his character because of the oppression that he experiences growing up. And it's like that is what the focus should be, not the like bodice ripping stuff. Like I'm for like sensuality and stuff. That's fun. Or kink, BDSM. They show that in like the latest film, but it doesn't really serve a purpose. And I was gonna say something else. I'm kind of all over the place. Anyway, I appreciate the class consciousness in this. And the movie just stops like halfway through the book, which is how most films portray this story, but the second half actually has more examples of like the redeeming power of love. So it just ends very bleakly. Anyway, this is chapter 20. For some days after that evening, Mr. Heathcliff shunned meeting us at meals. He would not consent formally to exclude Hareton and Cathy. He had an aversion to yielding so completely to his feelings, choosing, rather, to absent himself. And eating once in 24 hours seemed sufficient sustenance for him. One night after the family were in bed, I heard him go downstairs and out the front door. I did not hear him re-enter, and in the morning, I found he was still away. We were in April then. The weather was sweet and warm, the grass as green as showers, and sun could make it, and the 2 dwarf apple trees near the southern wall in full bloom. After breakfast, Catherine insisted on my bringing a chair and sitting with my work under the fir trees at the end of the house, and she beguiled Hareton, who had perfectly recovered from his accident, to dig and arrange her little garden, which was shifted to that corner by the influence of Joseph's complaints. Because they just started digging up Joseph's garden, and he came in upset, and they like tried to act surprised why he would be upset, and it's like, yeah, because you upper class people think you can just like go around and do whatever you want, even though Hareton was not treated as an upper class person. He was doing it at the behest of Cathy, who is in technically a higher class than he is. Even though he was actually born into it, he's not treated that way. Okay. Hi, Teeny. Welcome. Cat. This is Juniper. That was her meowing. We'll see. We'll see if she makes an appearance. Hey. I was comfortably reveling in the spring fragrance around. and the beautiful soft blue overhead when my young lady, who had run down near the gate to procure some primrose roots for a border, returned only half laden and informed us that Mr. Heathcliff was coming in. Okay, so we are getting some symbolism here of like gathering flowers to procure some primrose roots for a border, that there is this sense of new life, of spring, that things are changing. And he spoke to me, she added with a perplexed countenance. What did he say? Asked Hareton. He told me to be gone as fast as I could, she answered, but he looked so different from his usual look that I stopped a moment to stare at him. How? He inquired. Why, almost bright and cheerful. No, almost very much excited and wild and glad, she replied. Night walking amuses him, then, I remarked, affecting a careless manner. In reality, as surprised as she was, and anxious to ascertain the truth of her statement, for to see the master looking glad would not be an everyday spectacle, I framed an excuse to go in. Heathcliff stood at the open door. He was pale, and he trembled. Yet certainly he had a strange, joyful glitter in his eyes that altered the aspect of his whole face. Will you have some breakfast? I said. You must be hungry, rambling about all night. I wanted to discover where he had been, but I did not like to ask directly. No, I'm not hungry, he answered, averting his head, and speaking rather contemptuously, as if he guessed I was trying to divine the occasion of his good humor. I felt perplexed. I didn't know whether it were not a proper opportunity to offer a bit of admonition. I don't think it right to wander out of doors, I observed. Instead of being in bed, it is not wise at any rate, this moist season. I dare say you'll catch a bad cold or a fever. You have something the matter with you now. Nothing but what I can bear, he replied, and with the greatest pleasure, provided you'll leave me alone. Get in, and don't annoy me. I obeyed, and in passing, I noticed he breathed as fast as a cat. Speaking of cats. Yes, I reflected to myself, we shall have a fit of illness. I cannot conceive what he has been doing. That noon, he sat down to dinner with us, and received a heaped-up plate from my hands, as if he intended to make amends for previous fasting. I'm neither cold nor fever, Nellie, he remarked in allusion to my morning's speech, and I'm ready to do justice to the food you give me. He took his knife and fork, and was going to commence eating when the inclination appeared to become suddenly extinct. He laid them on the table, looking eagerly towards the window, then rose and went out. Yeah, so what happened? Why was he so happy? He's never been described in that way. We saw him walking to and fro in the garden while we concluded our meal, and Earnshaw said he'd go and ask why he would not dine. He thought we had grieved him some way. Well, is he coming? Cried Catherine when her cousin returned. Nay, he answered, but he's not angry. He seemed rare and pleased indeed. Only I made him impatient by speaking to him twice, and then he bid me be off to you. He wondered how I could want the company of anybody else. I set his place to keep warm. Again, Heathcliff just saying, like, whenever anybody offers some sort of care or compassion about his well-being, he just rejects it because he feels like he deserves it because of all of the trauma that he experienced growing up in being ostracized and marginalized and internalizing all of that and feeling like he doesn't deserve care, which then justifies his abuse of other people. Where was I? I set his plate to keep warm on the fender, and after an hour or two he re-entered when the room was clear, in no degree calmer. The same unnatural appearance of joy under his black brows, the same bloodless hue, and his teeth visible now and then in a kind of smile. Bloodless hue, meaning, like, that's the first time he's ever been described as, like, being somewhat pale. And so he does seem a little bit ill, but he's constantly talked about in these like racialized tones. So also the fact that he's like looking happier while he is showing more visible whiteness is very much a colonizer perspective in my mind. And his teeth visible now and then in a kind of smile, his frame shivering, not as one shivers with chill or weakness, but as a tight stretched cord vibrates, a strong thrilling rather than trembling. I will ask what is the matter, I thought, or who should, and I exclaimed, "Have you heard any good news, Mr. Heathcliff? You look uncommonly animated." "Where should good news come from? To me?" he said. "I'm animated with hunger, and seemingly I must not eat." "Your dinner is here," I returned. "Why won't you get it?" "I don't want it now," he muttered hastily. "I'll wait till supper. And Nellie, once for all, let me beg you to warn Hareton and the other away from me," because he says that Hareton and Catherine remind him too much of Kathy, the person he loved, who is the aunt of Hareton and Catherine. "I wish to be troubled by nobody. I wish to have this place to myself." "Is there some new reason for this banishment?" I inquired. "Tell me why you are so queer, Mr. Heathcliff." Same. Ooh, ooh. Okay. "Where were you last night? I'm not putting the question through idle curiosity, but—" "You are putting the question through very idle curiosity," he interrupted with a laugh. "Yet I'll answer it. Last night, I was on the threshold of hell." Okay, wow. I guess he was. Hi! Come here. He's deciding. Come here. Okay. Last night I was on the threshold of hell. Today I am within sight of my heaven. I have my eyes on it. Hardly 3 feet to sever me. And now you'd better go. You'll neither see nor hear anything to frighten you if you refrain from prying. Having swept the hearth and wiped the table, I departed, more perplexed than ever. He did not quit the house again that afternoon, and no one intruded on his solitude till at 8 o'clock I deemed it proper, though unsummoned, to carry a candle and his supper to him. He was leaning against the ledge of an open lattice, but not looking out. His face was turned to the interior gloom. The fire had smoldered to ashes. Is he in Kathy's old room, I wonder? The room was filled with the damp, mild air of the cloudy evening, and so still that not only the murmur of the beck down Gimmerton was distinguishable, but its ripples and its gurgling over the pebbles or through the large stones which it could not cover. I uttered an ejaculation of discontent at seeing the dismal grate, and commenced shutting the casements one after another till I came to his. "Must I close this?" I asked, in order to rouse him, for he would not stir. The light flashed on his features as I spoke. Oh, Mr. Lockwood, I cannot express what a terrible start I got by the momentary view. Those deep black eyes, that smile and ghastly paleness, again the paleness. It appeared to me, not Mr. Heathcliff, but a goblin, and in my terror I let the candle bend towards the wall, and it left me in darkness. So, of course, when, Heathcliff is, showing to be happier and showing more proximity to whiteness, being described as being paler, that, he is happier, and that people are viewing him in a more sympathetic light, as opposed to the rest of the time when they normally call him and describe him as a villain. But this way to call him a goblin is essentially saying, oh, this proximity to whiteness is not necessarily a good thing. It's even more fearful of him becoming or possibly being closer in class to everyone else. Okay. Yes, close it, he replied in a familiar voice. There, that is pure awkwardness. Why did you hold the candle horizontally? Be quick and bring another. I hurried out in a foolish state of dread, and said to Joseph, The master wishes you to take him a light and rekindle the fire. For I dare not go in myself again just then. Joseph rattled some fire into the shovel and went, but he brought it back immediately with the supper tray in his other hand, explaining that Mr. Heathcliff was going to bed and he wanted nothing to eat till morning. We heard him mount the stairs directly. He did not proceed to his ordinary chamber, but turned into that with the paneled bed. Yeah, so that's Kathy's bedroom. Its window, as I mentioned before, is wide enough for anybody to get through, and it struck me that he plotted another midnight excursion, which we had no suspicion of. Is he a ghoul or a vampire? I mused. Or he's just a human that you have always described in dehumanizing terms, Nellie. I had read of such hideous incarnate demons, and then I set myself to reflect how I had tended him in infancy, and watched him grow to youth, and followed him almost through his whole course, and what absurd nonsense it was to yield to that sense of horror. You did not tend to him, Nellie. You, ignored him a lot. She admits that. So, this revisionist history that she's going through, and now that he's a more sympathetic figure to her, that she is actually showing more compassion. But then again, she's describing him as, a demon. So she's just lying to herself that she actually cared about him at some point. Where did he come from? The little dark thing harbored by a good man to his bane, muttered Superstition as I dozed into unconsciousness. The little dark thing. Racialized language. And I began half dreaming to weary myself with imaging some fit parentage for him, and repeating my waking meditations, I tracked his existence over again with grim variations. At last picturing his death and funeral, Jesus, of which all I can remember is being exceedingly vexed at having the task of dictating an inscription for his monument, and consulting the sexton about it, and as he had no surname, and we could not tell his age, we were obliged to content ourselves with the single word Heathcliff. That came true. We were. If you enter the kirkyard, you'll read on his headstone only that, and the date of his death. So she's already fantasizing about his death. Dawn restored me to common sense. I rose and went into the garden, as soon as I could see, to ascertain if there were any footmarks under his window. There were none. He has stayed at home, I thought, and he'll be all right today. Also, this, colonizer language to be describing people of color as, mystical and these fairy tale creatures in order to dehumanize them further and act as a tool of othering. That she's oh, maybe he doesn't have footprints because he's some sort of creature. Okay. Oh wait, I already read that. I prepared breakfast for the household, as was my usual custom, but told Hareton and Catherine to get theirs, ere the master came down, for he lay late. They preferred taking it out of doors under the trees, and I set a little table to accommodate them. On my re-entrance, I found Mr. Heathcliff below. He and Joseph were conversing about some farming business. He gave clear, minute directions concerning the matter discussed, but he spoke rapidly and turned his head continually aside, and had the same excited expression, even more exaggerated. When Joseph quitted the room, he took his seat in the place he generally chose, and I put a basin of coffee before him. He drew it nearer, and then rested his arm on the table, and looked at the opposite wall, as I supposed, surveying one particular portion, up and down, with glittering, restless eyes, and with such eager interest that he stopped breathing during half a minute together. "Come now," I exclaimed, pushing some bread against his hand. Eat and drink that while it is hot. It has been waiting near an hour. He didn't notice me, and yet he smiled. Again, the same thing that happened with Kathy of like as she was getting close to dying, her being able to see spirits have essentially like this veil of mortality be thinner. He is experiencing that. And I think shows that they are more connected than what many of the characters in the book want to admit. That they have a lot of similarities and have this connection. I'd rather have seen him gnash his teeth than smile so. Mr. Heathcliff! Master! I cried. Don't, for God's sake, stare as if you saw an unearthly vision! Okay. Don't for God's sake shout so loud, he replied. Turn round and tell me, are we by ourselves? Of course, was my answer. Of course we are. Still, I involuntarily obeyed him, as if I were not quite sure. With a sweep of his hand, he cleared a vacant space in front among the breakfast things, and leant forward to gaze more at his ease. Now I perceived he was not looking at the wall, for when I regarded him alone, it seemed exactly that he gazed at something within 2 yards' distance, and whatever it was, it communicated, apparently, both pleasure and pain, in exquisite extremes at least. The anguished, yet raptured expression of his countenance suggested that idea. So most likely he's seen, like, the spirit of Catherine. The fancied object was not fixed either. His eyes pursued it with unwearied vigilance, and even in speaking to me were never weaned away. I vainly reminded him of his protracted abstinence from food. If he stirred to touch anything in compliance with my entreaties, if he stretched his hand out to get a piece of bread, his fingers clenched before they reached it, and remained on the table, forgetful of their aim. I sat a model of patience, trying to attract his absorbed attention from its engrossing speculation, till he grew irritable and got up, asking why I would not allow him to have his own time in taking his meals, and saying that, on the next occasion, I needn't wait, I might set things down and go. Having uttered these words, he left the house, slowly sauntered down the garden path, and disappeared through the gate. The hours crept anxiously by. Another evening came. I did not retire to rest till late, and when I did, I could not sleep. He returned after midnight, and instead of going to bed, shut himself into the room beneath. I listened and tossed about, and finally dressed and descended. It was too irksome to lie up there, harassing my brain with 100 idle misgivings. I distinguished Mr. Heathcliff's step, restlessly measuring the floor, and he frequently broke the silence by a deep inspiration, resembling a groan. He muttered detached words also. The only one I could catch was the name of Catherine, coupled with some wild term of endearment or suffering, and spoken as one would speak to a person present, low and earnest, and wrung from the depth of his soul. I had not courage to walk straight into the apartment, but I desired to divert him from his reverie, and therefore fell foul of the kitchen fire, stirred it, and began to scrape the cinders. It drew him forth sooner than I expected. He opened the door immediately and said, "Nellie, come here. Is it morning? Come in with your light." "It is striking 4, I answered. "You want a candle to take upstairs? You might have lit one at this fire." "No, I don't wish to go upstairs," he said. "Come in and kindle me a fire, and do anything there is to do about the room." "I must blow the coals red first before I can carry any," I replied, getting a chair in the bellows. He roamed to and fro, meantime, in a state approaching distraction, his heavy sighs succeeding each other so thick as to leave no space for common breathing between. "When day breaks, I'll send for Green," he said. "I wish to make some legal inquiries of him, while I can bestow a thought on those matters, and while I can act calmly. I've not written my will yet, and how to leave my property. I cannot determine. I wish I could annihilate it from the face of the earth." "I would not talk so, Mr. Heathcliff," I interposed. "Let your will be a while. You'll be spared to repent of your many injustices yet. I never expected that your nerves would be disordered. They are at present, marvelously so, however, and almost entirely through your own fault. The way you've passed these last 3 days might knock up a Titan. Do take up some food and some repose. You need only look at yourself in a glass to see how you require both. Your cheeks are hollow and your eyes bloodshot, like a person starving with hunger and going blind with loss of sleep. It is not my fault that I cannot eat or rest, he replied. I assure you it is through no settled designs. I'll do both as soon as I possibly can. But you might as well bid a man struggling in the water rest within arm's length of the shore. I must reach it first, and then I'll rest. Well, never mind, Mr. Green. As to repenting of my injustices, I've done no injustice, and I repent of nothing. I'm too happy, and yet I'm not happy enough. My soul's bliss kills my body, but does not satisfy itself. Happy, master? I cried. Strange happiness. If you would hear me without being angry, I might offer some advice that would make you happier. What is that? He asked. Give it. You are aware, Mr. Heathcliff, I said, that from the time you were 13 years old, you have lived a selfish, unchristian life, and probably hardly had a Bible in your hands during that period. Okay. Yeah, maybe he wasn't Christian to begin with, bitch. And that's fine. You must have forgotten the context of the book, and you may not have space to search it now. Could it be hurtful to send someone, some minister of any denomination, it does not matter which, to explain it, and show you how very far you have erred from its precepts, and how unfit you will be for its heaven unless a change takes place before you die? I'm rather obliged than angry, Nellie, he said, for you remind me of the manner that I desire to be buried in. Oh, that's bleak. It is to be carried to the churchyard in the evening. You and Harriton may, if you please, accompany me, and mind particularly to notice that the sexton obeys my directions concerning the 2 coffins. No minister need come, nor need anything be said over me. I tell you, I've nearly attained my heaven, and that of others is altogether unvalued and uncoveted by me. He's like, I don't care about anything now that Catherine is dead, but I just want to be buried next to her. And supposing you perversed in your obstinate fast. And supposing you persevered in your obstinate fast and died by that means, and they refused to bury you in the precincts of the kirk, I said, shocked at his godless indifference, how would you like it? They won't do that, he replied. If they did, you must have me removed secretly, and if you neglect it, you shall prove, practically, that the dead are not annihilated. So he's like, if you don't do it, I'm going to come back and haunt you. As soon as he heard the other members of the family stirring, he retired to his den, and I breathed freer. But in the afternoon, while Joseph and Harriton were at their work, he came into the kitchen again, and with a wild look bid me come and sit in the house. He wanted somebody with him. I declined, telling him plainly that his strange talk and manner frightened me, and I had neither the nerve nor the will to be his companion alone. I believe you think me a fiend, he said with his dismal laugh. Something too horrible to live under a decent roof. Then turning to Catherine, who was there, and drew behind me at his approach, he added half sneeringly, Will you come, Chuck? I'll not hurt you. No? To you, I've made myself worse than the devil. Well, there is one who won't shrink from my company. By God, she's relentless. Oh, damn it. It's unutterably too much for flesh and blood to bear, even mine. He solicited the society of no one more, so it seems like he is being haunted by Catherine. That's who he's referring to. At dusk, he went into his chamber through the whole night. Into his chamber. Through the whole night and far into the morning, we heard him groaning and murmuring to himself. Harriton was anxious to enter, but I bid him fetch Mr. Kenneth, and he should go in and see him. When he came and I requested admittance, and tried to open the door, I found it locked, and Heathcliff bid us be damned. He was better, and would be left alone, so the doctor went away. The following evening was very wet. Indeed, it poured down till day dawn, and as I took my morning walk round the house, I observed the master's window swinging up and the rain driving straight in. He's opening it because that's how he lets in the spirit of Catherine, as we have seen from the past. There's a reason why when Catherine was having her quote-unquote mad scene, which makes it seem like they might not actually be mad, they may actually be able to like see spirits or something, but she opened the windows and was acting in a very similar manner, so them once again being tied to one another. He cannot be in bed, I thought. Those showers would drench him through. He must either be up or out. But I'll make no more ado. I'll go boldly and look. Having succeeded in obtaining entrance with another key, I ran to unclose the panels, for the chamber was vacant. Quickly pushing them aside, I peeped in. Mr. Heathcliff was there, laid on his back. His eyes met mine, so keen and fierce, I started, and then he seemed to smile. I could not think him dead, but his face and throat were washed with rain, the bedclothes dripped, and he was perfectly still. The lattice, flapping to and fro, had grazed one hand that rested on the sill. No blood trickled from the broken skin, and when I put my fingers to it, I could doubt no more. He was dead and stark. Wow. But this time, when he died and the windows are open, his spirit hopefully gets to be with Catherine. I hasped the window. I combed his black long hair from his forehead. I tried to close his eyes, to extinguish, if possible, that frightful, lifelike gaze of exultation before anyone else beheld it. So the look is probably like he saw Catherine for sure, like she was welcoming him into death or whatever kind of afterlife or something. But he accomplished his goal of seeing her, it seems. They would not shut, but they seemed to sneer at my attempts, and his parted lips and sharp white teeth sneered too. Taken with another fit of cowardice, I cried out for Joseph. Joseph shuffled up and made a noise, but resolutely refused to meddle with him. "The divil's harried off his soul," he cried, "and he ma have his carcass into to bargain for out. Ah care. Ech, what a wicked un he looks, gurnin' at death." And the old sinner grinned in mockery. I thought he intended to cut a caper round the bed, but suddenly composing himself, he fell on his knees and raised his hands and returned thanks for the lawful master, and the ancient stock were restored to their rights. I felt stunned by the awful event, and my memory unavoidably recurred to former times with a sort of oppressive sadness. But poor Hareton, the most wronged, not acknowledging that, like, Heathcliff was wronged growing up, that led to a lot of this kind of behavior. He sat by the corpse all night, weeping in bitter earnest. He pressed its hand and kissed the sarcastic, savage face that everyone else shrank from contemplating, and bemoaned him with that strong grief which springs naturally from a generous heart, though it be tough as tempered steel. Kenneth was perplexed to pronounce of what disorder the master died. I concealed the fact of his having swallowed nothing for 4 days, fearing it might lead to trouble, and then I am persuaded he did not abstain on purpose. It was the consequence of his strange illness, not the cause. We buried him, to the scandal of the whole neighborhood, as he had wished, because they buried him next to Catherine. He got his wish. Okay. Earnshaw and I, the sexton, and 6 men to carry the coffin, comprehended the whole attendance. The 6 men departed when they had let it down into the grave. We stayed to see it covered. Hareton, with a streaming face, dug green sods and laid them over the brown mold himself. At present it is as smooth and verdant as its companion mounds, and I hoped its tenant sleeps as soundly. But the country folks, if you asked them, would swear on their Bible that he walks. There are those who speak to having met him near the church, and on the moor, and even within this house. Idle tales, you'll say, and so say I. Yet that old man by the kitchen fire affirms he has seen 2 on him, looking out on his chamber window on every rainy night since his death. And an odd thing happened to me about a month ago. I was going to the Grange one evening. A dark evening threatening thunder, and just at the turn of the heights, I encountered a little boy with a sheep and 2 lambs before him. He was crying terribly, and I supposed the lambs were skittish and would not be guided. "What is the matter with my little man?" Oh, not with. "What is the matter, my little man?" I asked. "They's Heathcliff and a woman yonder, under to nab," he blubbered, "and I dar not pass 'em." I saw nothing, but neither the sheep nor he would go on, so I bid him take the road lower down. He probably raised the phantoms from thinking, as he traversed the moors alone, on the nonsense he had heard his parents and companions repeat. Yet still, I don't like being out in the dark now, and I don't like being left by myself in this grim house. I cannot help it. I shall be glad when they leave it, and shift to the Grange. "They are going to the Grange, then?" I said. "Yes," answered Mrs. Dean, "as soon as they are married, and that will be on New Year's Day." "And who will live here, then?" "Why, Joseph will take care of the house, and perhaps a lad to keep him company." This is what makes me think that Joseph is queer, and that he liked Hareton, that he also probably has a crush on Heathcliff. It would explain a lot of his behavior. "They will live in the kitchen, and the rest will be shut up." So you're going to make them sleep in the kitchen? They can't, sleep in the rooms? Classist. "For the use of such ghosts as choose to inhabit it," I observed. Oh, so this is going back to Mr. Lockwood. "For the use of such ghosts as choose to inhabit it," I observed. "No, Mr. Lockwood," said Nellie, shaking her head. "I believe the dead are at peace, but it is not right to speak of them with levity." At that moment, the garden gate swung to. The ramblers were returning. "They are afraid of nothing," I grumbled, watching their approach through the window. "Together they would brave Satan and all his legions." As they stepped onto the doorstones and halted to take a last look at the moon, or more correctly at each other, by her light, I felt irresistibly impelled to escape them again. And pressing a remembrance into the hand of Mrs. Dean, and disregarding her expostulations at my rudeness, I vanished through the kitchen. As they opened the house door, oh yeah, this is going back to him narrating. "And so should have confirmed Joseph in his opinion of his fellow servants' gay indiscretions." Gay? "Had he not, fortunately, recognized me for a respectable character by the sweet ring of a sovereign at his feet. My walk home was lengthened by a diversion in the direction of the kirk, when beneath its walls I perceived decay had made progress even in 7 months. Many a window showed black gaps deprived of glass, and slates jutted off here and there, beyond the right line of the roof, to be gradually worked off in the coming autumn storms. I sought, and soon discovered, the 3 headstones on the slope next to the moor, the middle one gray and half buried in heath, Edgar Linton's only harmonized by the turf, and moss creeping up its foot. Heathcliff's still bare, so they're both buried by Catherine. I lingered round them under the benign sky, watched the moths fluttering among the heath and harebells, listened to the soft wind breathing through the grass, and wondered how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth. The end. That's the end of the book. Yay! That took a little bit longer. I'm going a little bit later than usual, but fuck it. It's fun to be able to finish. I do like the book more reading it a second time now that I'm older. The first time I was 11 when I read it, and I hated it. And I do appreciate the class consciousness in this. It does have a very colonized perspective, of course, where Heathcliff is immediately ostracized and abused because of his race. They are not sure what his background is, so they get to impose all of these sort of stereotypes on him in history, and it doesn't seem like he has access to his own history as well. So there is this loneliness and sadness and anger that develops in him, and this desire for revenge. And Catherine, even though he loved her, she wasn't really that nice to him, like, to be honest, and said that marrying him would degrade her, which, like, in terms of class, it would. But he really was dealt a bad hand. And it is interesting to see how, like, these different forces of oppression in society bring Heathcliff and Catherine together to be able to relate to one another, but it also is what is keeping them apart, this class and racial structure that is saying that some people are allowed to own things and have things and be members of society and other people aren't. We have to talk about, oh, hi. We have to talk about how Heathcliff is portrayed as a villain, a kind of monster to be afraid of, that the description of his skin color and features, that they are used to inspire fear a lot of the time in these portrayals. And that everything seems to be like out of sorts while he owns both of those properties, and then things are at peace once he is gone. So like that has to be noticed, that like the person of color who was actually able to own land and use the society and how it functioned at the time to his advantage, that it was viewed as being like diabolical and evil. But when it came to the other people, the white people who were using this system for their own means and self-enrichment, bettering their stations, that it wasn't viewed as a negative thing. It also is interesting to look at Heathcliff as a lower class person, working class person. This is how he started out, and how the working class people are the ones he seems to get along the most with, except for Nellie. And Nellie seems to be a class traitor, though, because she looks out for the well-being of her employers more than like her own well-being a lot of the time. So we have to call into question whether Nellie is a reliable narrator or not. Mr. Lockwood doesn't seem to be a reliable narrator. But the fact that Emily Bronte was willing to engage in this kind of discourse of acknowledging human cruelty, these systems of oppression, she did perpetuate a lot of harmful stereotypes for people with melanin in their skin, racializing someone and having him be like the worst kind of villain, that like his coloring is a source of fear in many of these descriptions. That is harmful, but it does actually acknowledge a person of color in this time of the British Empire, and that people were treated poorly because of this difference that they're pointing out in society and marginalizing people for. So it is this interesting contrast between like colonizing forces and this status quo of classism, where we have the people who are most Christian seem to be the ones that seem to get in their way a lot of the time. But that is what Nellie keeps imposing on other people, and this is like a constant source of stress and annoyance to Catherine and Heathcliff all throughout growing up. And that like this rejection of Christianity seems to have like kind of brought about their doom. But there is also this element of like spirits and mysticism and magic existing. So it's a blend of having more pagan, indigenous beliefs be shown, but also having the prioritization of Christianity as like the main source of morality can't be ignored as well. Okay, that was a lot of me just like rambling and saying my opinion, But that's Wuthering Heights. I'm curious to hear what you all think. I want to be better about like reading the sections beforehand so that I'm not just going in cold, because that's what I have been doing. And just like guessing as to like inflections and just like discovering things as I'm reading it out loud. So I want to prep a little more for the readings before each stream and plan around them a little bit more. So I'm going to be doing that from now on. But tomorrow, I want to finish that Rohan Davis video. I want to talk about Orientalism, how it has functioned and justified imperialist violence, and how it is currently being used in many ways to justify this illegal, immoral war against Iran and all of the other kinds of aggression that are happening across the world. Okay. Well, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks for being here. I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, wherever you are, and I will see you soon. Okay, bye.